Hey guys. This is what if Naruto was trained by Kurama. After a life-changing event, Naruto meets Kurama early, and they become partners, even good friends. With a better outlook on life, he meets many who want to join him and help achieve their dreams and goals together. Among those friends are many beautiful women who have realized just how important he is to them. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 1: The Beginnings. Some time after the Kyuubi attack, it was a clear night in Konohagakure, the shinobi village in service to the Land of Fire, one of the 5 major elemental nations ruling the large continent. Arguably the most powerful of the 5 great hidden villages, Konoha endured and survived attacks from the others and their allied minor villages in 3 separate large-scale conflicts called the Great Shinobi Wars. Even more impressive, they came out among the decisive victors in each of those wars. Thanks to the powerful, and somewhat eccentric, shinobi in service to the village that helped secure those victories, it was a quiet and peaceful night for citizens of Konoha without any fear of unprovoked attacks from outside forces. Despite that, members of the Uchiha police force were diligently keeping the peace with their silent patrols on the streets and rooftops. In addition, the Special Operations Force AMBU, while unseen, also watched for any danger from the shadows. All whispered conversations in the shadows and drunken mumbles from a few stragglers ceased abruptly when they all sensed a growing presence in the air. Glancing up from whatever they were doing, they noted a lone old man walking down a dirty and poorly maintained street, a good sign that he was in one of the poorer parts of Konoha. He looked as if he already had a particular destination in mind, with his wizened face set in stone, and his dark eyes never wavering. For A and B were easily keeping pace with the old-looking man from the rooftops, slipping between shadows silently and unseen. It wasn't because they considered this man a threat like one might think. Instead, they would give their lives to protect him from any slightest indication of danger coming from any direction. This village leader, and the powerful commander of its military, was known as Sarutobi Hiruzen, or the 3rd Hokage. His large white haori with red accents flared out at the bottom as he walked more like glided silently down the street toward an old and decrepit apartment building. He stopped in front of its entrance gate for a moment, and shifted the front brim of his large and iconic conical Hokage hat up to glance at the fresh graffiti covering the front of the building and its perimeter wall. He sighed despairingly as he stroked his graying pointed goatee and read over the painted text. "Die, demon, and go away, monster," were some of the kinder words he made out. It's already been years since the Kyuubi attack. Why do the people of this village still carry so much hatred? He thought angrily as he almost forced the creaky old front gate off its hinges, opening it, and continued onward into the building. The 4 ANBU guarding him split up, with 2 going inside after him in almost invisible blurs while the other 2 took up vantage points on the rooftop. After making his way up several flights of stairs to the top floor, he arrived at the door to the apartment belonging to one Uzumaki Naruto. The young boy was living here by himself, ever since he was forced out of the orphanage last year, and the 3rd had to give him a place to live in since no one were able to adopt him due to politics involved. As soon as he moved in, the tenants all immediately moved out, even the landlord. In all senses, it was an abandoned building slowly falling into disrepair. Only the occasional genin team hired by the 3rd himself to do maintenance on the building barely kept it from being unsafe to live in for the young boy. He raised his hand to knock on the door, having come here to check in on Naruto, and hand him an envelope holding this month's allowance. Waiting patiently as the knocking echoed almost forebodingly throughout the hallway, the Hokage's thoughts began going over what had been happening to this child, not for the first time, and certainly not the last time. He couldn't help but blame himself for not being able to save his former successor, the 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze, from sacrificing himself to seal the Kyuubi into his own newborn son, Naruto, during that disaster on October 10th so long ago. Naruto's mother, Kushina Uzumaki, who was already fatally wounded from when the Kyuubi inexplicitly broke out of her seal while giving birth, sacrificed herself holding the demon fox down with her unique chakra chain jutsu to help her husband complete the sealing process. If only Hiruzen had managed to get there before the 4th Shiki Fuijin sealing ritual took place, he would have gladly taken Minato's place in the Shinigami's stomach. That would have at least allowed the young man to live in order to be able to take care of his son and protect him from those who resented his jinchuriki status. Instead, after the deaths of Minato and Kushina, Hiruzen, even as he mourned his beloved wife's death, was forced to come out of retirement and retake the Hokage hat until another suitable replacement could be found. Somewhat regretfully, he was also forced to keep Naruto's parentage a secret, even from the child himself. A Wagakure in Land of Earth would have likely attempted to kill any offspring of Minato Namikaze, the man who single-handedly decimated a large portion of its army in one battle with his deadly techniques in the last great shinobi war. That would include sending assassins after an infant. The Hokage could not risk that with his village still recovering its shinobi force from the war and the Kyuubi's destruction, at least until Naruto himself grew up to be strong enough to defend himself from most adversaries. Unfortunately, due to his parentage being secret and having to be hidden among Konoha's many orphans as a legitimate ward of the village's civilian council, this left him alone to face the coming animosity. When it was leaked that the Kyuubi was sealed into this young boy, most of the village believed him to be a true reincarnation of the monster itself instead of being its container. The Hokage and many other respected shinobi did try to stem the coming storm by publicly announcing that Naruto was just a human child who had the misfortune of being chosen to carry a heavy burden. For that, he should have been viewed as a hero. The villagers, in their grief and hatred over losing their beloved fourth Hokage and many of their loved ones, ignored their pleading and tried to openly attack and kill the infant anyway. After seeing his ANBU stop so many attempts, the third became angry and passed a law forbidding any talk of Naruto being the Kyuubi container on pain of death. He hoped that the hatred would not be passed down to the child's own generation at least, though he knew that was a fool's hope at best. In the years since the attack, quite a few shinobi, like the Yamanaka clan head and the famous Hatake Kakashi of the Sharingan, found themselves blocked in every attempt to take Naruto, and thanks to the village council making it a mission to put up impassable red tapes in order to keep the child isolated as much as possible. Blinded by their hatred toward the Kyuubi, the civilian council refused to believe the child could not be the demon fox and kept finding ways to discreetly have their ward die early without intervention from the Hokage. They began by denying him even the basic necessaries of life by often having him kicked out of stores and restaurants and overcharging him for anything, even expired food. It was only luck that there were no attempt to attack Naruto outright due to the ANBU standing guard around him in the shadows almost all the time. The old man had to allow a small smile as he remembered how his most powerful, and rather antisocial, ANBU, recently promoted to commander, was quite protective of the cute and innocent infant back then. The Hokage, in all his power, could not do much as there weren't any evidence that the council was going behind his back. Instead, he could only watch over Naruto from afar as the child continued to be more isolated from everyone in the village. Even the children his age avoided him due to their parents warning them to stay away from him without any explanation. The old man was brought out of his grim thoughts by the cold silence that followed his knocking. It unnerved him somewhat, since he felt this wasn't due to the stillness of an empty apartment. His shinobi senses, refined by age and experience, told him this was unnatural. To confirm, he waved a hand and two ANBU seemed to melt out of the walls on both sides of the door. They immediately went down to one knee where they stood in salutation to their leader. "Has Naruto-kun left the apartment at any time tonight?" Hiruzen asked the dog-masked ANBU with gravity-defying silver hair kneeling to his right. This particular ANBU captain was called Inu, or, more famously, Hatake Kakashi of the Sharingan whenever he wasn't wearing his ANBU mask. "No, Hokage-sama. He entered the apartment mid-afternoon and hadn't left since. Before that, we followed him through his usual routine. Aside from eating lunch at Ichiraku Ramen, nothing of interest happened today," Inu replied quickly. The Hokage seemed to contemplate this for a moment before the ANBU added, "But he seemed out of it. I think he's depressed." A small shiver went down the third's spine at this observation, and one thought went through his mind out of instinct. It couldn't be. It should be impossible for a young child to think about that. He immediately pointed his index finger at the door, and 4 ANBU, the two guarding Naruto plus the two that followed the Hokage into the building, quickly surrounded the door with 2 on each side. Inu, on the right side, picked the lock almost instantly and slowly opened the door. When it tapped fully open against the wall, all 4 masked shinobi quickly zipped into the apartment with a textbook crisscross entry procedure. The Hokage, walking calmly but decisively, then immediately followed them in. The first thing he noticed was the deep darkness and the unnatural quietness permeating throughout the entire apartment. Even if Naruto was sleeping, shallow breathing should have been heard at least. Inu and his partner were standing in the unlit kitchen to the left, and the other 2 ANBU took positions in the empty living room to the right. After a quick scan, All five noted some dim light leaking out from under the door to the bathroom down the hallway opposite from the entrance. The third desperately hoped that the young child was just taking a bath and ended up falling asleep. Inu shattered that hope into a million pieces. Hokage-sama, I smell bee blood. So much of it, he whispered haltingly with his uncovered eye widening behind his ANBU mask. Not wasting any time, the third, with speed not seen by any for years, blurred to the locked bathroom door and using nothing but his natural strength, easily ripped it off the frame with a thunderous crack of its cheap plywood construction around the hinges. Tossing the door aside with the ANBU immediately moving up behind him, Hiruzen prepared himself for what was beyond, and still could not contain his shock. Blood. If one had to describe the horrific sight the Hokage and the ANBU saw in the tiny bathroom in one word, it was simply that. There was so much of that viscous, life-giving liquid covering nearly every inch of this enclosed space in large splatters and blots. The cheap tiled floor was covered wall to wall with a thin sheen of bright red color, because the water overflowing from the bathtub diluted the blood. Also, next to the tub laid a rusty and chipped kunai, apparently discarded by a random shinobi long ago. It was nearly covered handle to pointed tip in that viscous liquid as well. It was at this moment that the third made the grisly discovery. A blood-soaked blonde boy was slumped down in the tiny bathtub filled to the brim with red water. His eyes were closed, and his face was deathly pale with shallow cheeks. His left arm was sticking out over the edge of the tub, his limp hand hovering over exactly where the rusty kunai was located. The last thing to hit everyone was the putrid metallic smell of dried blood in this tiny space. The third had to choke back some vomit, and it was only thanks to his years of seeing death and gore on the battlefield. One ANBU with him wasn't as steeled against this sight and smell, and immediately took his mask off to vomit his last meal onto the hallway floor. Inu slowly removed his mask, revealing one wide eye and his mouth obviously gaped behind his face mask. He became still and unable to speak, not believing the sight. The last two ANBU stepped back in shock and had to turn away. They were all used to seeing this kind of scenes involving adults, not a child so young like Naruto. Snapping out of his shock, the Hokage quickly moved to Naruto's still body and scooped him out of the bathtub, getting blood everywhere on his white and red haori, not that he even bothered caring. He cradled the small and fragile body to his chest as he checked for a pulse. It felt like an eternity, as he held his breath until he finally found one tiny heartbeat, but it was barely there. He then quickly searched for any cut on the neck or the arms to stop the bleeding. To his surprise there were none, not even a scar. Why? A small and weak voice barely reached Hiruzen's ears. The old man immediately stopped his frantic checking and looked at Naruto's face. What he saw broke his heart. Coldness, despair, and crushing emptiness were all he saw in this child's half-open eyes. Why didn't I die? I wanted to. The pale boy managed to whisper out. Hiruzen began to tremble, and he had to allow some tears out as he clutched the fragile boy tighter to his chest. His 4 ANBU couldn't stand to watch this and went off to pretend to check the surroundings while dealing with their own emotions. Naruto-kun, you need to tell me why you did this. The suddenly frail old man choked out. I'm tired of not being seen. I want to exist. Naruto tiredly whispered out before breaking down sobbing softly with an anguished expression. Each rack of the boy's sobbing form was like a knife stabbing directly into Hiruzen's heart. I see cut at my wrists, F4 times. Every time I go to sleep, but I still wake up with no C cut. It must have been the Kyuubi's chakra. How ironic, your curse saving your life. The Hokage thought sadly as he watched Naruto slowly fade away into unconsciousness, now completely exhausted. At this point, he finally stood up, carefully wrapped up the naked boy with his ruined haori, and quickly carried him out of the apartment. He then made a beeline for the hospital with his best speed, and Inu was hot on his heels while the other ANBU remained behind to clean up and try to get over what they just saw. Next day at the hospital, the Hokage marched into the front lobby of the hospital with a tall Jounin by his side, both carrying grim expressions on their faces. This new man wore a regular Konoha Jounin outfit, with a heavy green long-sleeved shirt and a loose red cloth vest layered over the flak vest being the only variations. The Hittite was displayed on his forehead with clear pride, and he had his long dirty blonde hair tied into a high ponytail. His pale blue pupilless eyes displayed determination, but also some worry. The receptionist gasped and stood to greet them with a nervous expression. A stern hand gesture from the third implied no greeting was necessary as the two men walked past the stunned woman to the stairwell, Upon arriving at the correct floor, they continued briskly to Naruto's room that was currently under heavy watch with 2 guards at the door and an ANBU hidden in the ceiling inside the room. The Hokage immediately dismissed the guards with a gesture. As they entered the room, he then waved his hand to allow the ANBU to appear from the ceiling. It turned out to be Inu. Glancing at each other briefly, all 3 men then had a quick look at Naruto in his hospital bed. He still looked pale and unconscious. A small and pained intake of breath from the new man was the only sound anyone made. While the blonde jounin stood still staring almost despairingly at the patient, Inu and the Hokage immediately set to putting up several security seals around the room. After a moment of tense silence, the Hokage finally spoke up. "Yamanaka and Noichi, what happens here never gets past these 4 walls. Is that understood?" The answer was a grim nod from the now identified head of the Yamanaka clan, and one of the top experts in mind arts. "Now I wish to thank you for discreetly taking care of the ANBU who were with us, as well the doctor who was here last night. I doubt they would miss the memories anyway, and we absolutely have to keep this to as few people as possible," the Hokage offered with a sad smile. "I wouldn't want to remember this either if I had a choice, Hokage-sama. To think this child is the same age as my daughter." Inoichi trailed off as he stared sadly at the feeble blonde boy sleeping peacefully in the bed. This was the child he and his wife wanted to adopt since birth. He felt red-hot anger flare up inside against this village's civilians for impeding them so much, and had to work to remain calm. The third nodded before turning toward Inu. "Inu, would you like to have your memory from last night altered?" The ANBU slowly took his dog mask off to reveal a man with one lazy-looking eye. The other was covered by a small black eye patch designed to fit inside his ANBU mask. A dark blue spandex face mask covered the bottom half of his face all the way up to his nose. Hatake Kakashi shook his head in response. "No, I need to remember this, Hokage-sama. It'll encourage me to make sure he's better protected from now on," he replied in an unusually serious tone for anyone that knew him personally. The third nodded again with a sad smile before turning back to Inoichi. "Inoichi-san, as we have discussed before, I would like for you to go into Naruto-kun's mind and completely remove any trance of the past 48 hours from his memories. Then go back to the time he just left the orphanage and work from there to the present, altering some events he encountered in subtle ways that may help him feel a little better about himself. Even random acts of kindness from non-existent strangers will help. As for why he ended up here, an accident involving him hitting his head should work and explain the foggy memories he may have after this. If you wish to object about any ethical issue with this, now is the time to do it, and I will note it in the report that I'm making for Hokage's eyes only." Inoichi shook his head. How could he object to this? No child should ever have to think about committing suicide. He then walked over to Naruto's bedside and pulled up a chair so he could sit comfortably as he dived into the boy's mind. Upon reaching up to the boy's forehead with his hand, the Hokage decided to give the clan head a warning. "Be careful. Only Minato-kun knew exactly how the QB seal works, and you may encounter the beast in there. If you do, give it a wide berth and try your best to fix the memories. It should not be able to harm you, but it may attempt to speak to you. Be wary of it." Inoichi only hesitated for half a second before touching his hand to the boy's forehead. The closing of his eyes and slight slumping of his shoulders were the only signs he had successfully entered Naruto's mind. The Hokage sighed as he sat in another chair. "I hope this works," he mumbled as he and Kakashi watched over the 2 blondes. 2 hours later, Inoichi blinked awake as he removed his hand from Naruto's forehead. The Hokage and Kakashi looked up at this movement, and they were surprised to see the blonde jounin shoot up out of his seat with his body trembling from unbridled rage. "How dare they!" he growled out quietly before exploding. "Those bastards! How dare they!" he roared before slamming a fist on a nearby wall, cracking it a little. Afterward, he had to work to regain control and managed to calm down a little. The Hokage and Kakashi were stunned to see the normally calm clan head fly off the handle like this. They decided to give the blonde a minute to calm down more. "Did you see anything notable?" Hiruzen finally inquired after an eternity of tense silence. "Nothing. Absolutely nothing, Hokage-sama," Inoichi bit out. This odd statement confused the other men. "That's the thing. This young child was never attacked. The worst they ever did physically were selling him bad food and throwing him out of stores and restaurants. Apparently they didn't see the point of directly harming him since it would most likely mean their death due to your law." The Hokage nodded for the blonde to continue. Inoichi let out a pain-filled sigh as he stared down at the unconscious Naruto with trembling eyes. They just acted like he didn't exist. They ignored him and cursed him anywhere he went. The only times he actually got positive attention was whenever he saw you or ate ramen with a middle-aged man and his daughter. He has been dealing with that ever since the first memory he could remember. I wonder which is worse, physical harm or having your entire existence cursed and denied anywhere you went? The Hokage's expression slowly became grim as he began to understand what the clan head was getting at. Kakashi was now glaring intensely at a particular spot on a wall. After a moment of silence, the third finally spoke up. Do you think you did enough alternations that his mental state might be improved after this? It's hard to say, but in my study of his mind, he was so desperate for attention that a single encounter with a kind stranger boosted his belief in his existence exponentially. I created and scattered several encounters like that throughout the past year and altered some of the negative events he encountered to have somewhat better outcomes. I even put myself in one of the new memories so he would feel comfortable talking to me if he sees me again around this village. I will likely introduce my daughter to him to be friends at that point. The civilians will object to seeing these two together, the third stated calmly. They all can go to hell for all I care. Inoichi snarled in response, before taking a breath to continue calmly. My wife and I have allowed ourselves to be pushed around by them and their red tapes whenever we tried to adopt young Naruto. We've dealt with it long enough, and if we cannot go that route, then we will involve ourselves in his life another way. It's not like they can legitimately order Inohime to not be friends with him. The Hokage nodded in response. I couldn't agree more. I will support you and whoever goes this route fully. Did you do anything more in his mind? I couldn't because I'm sure he'd notice. I believe when he wakes up, he should be in a better mood. Even then, I still hope he will become friends with my daughter and the others. That will go a long way toward validating his belief in his existence. Inoichi spoke in an analytical tone. Very good. What about the Kyuubi? Did you encounter it? No, Hokage-sama. I easily felt its presence in the mindscape, but Naruto's memories were located far away from the Kyuubi, so I was able to work unimpeded. Inoichi replied with apparent relief. Good. The fourth did an excellent job with the seal then. Now I need you two to understand why none of this leaves the room. The Hokage began with a firm gaze at the two men before continuing. If news of this got back to those who are still angry about the Kyuubi, they will believe whatever they were doing was working and will intensify their efforts, making this worse and isolating him even more. I do not want to see a repeat of what I've seen the night before. Naruto-kun and suicide should not exist together in the same sentence. I know you believe this as well. The other two men nodded in firm agreement. The third sighed before putting his hand up in a half-ram seal and whispering Kai to release the security seals in the room. Inoichi slowly rubbed his palm on the young blonde boy's forehead with a sad expression before it changed to one of full-on determination. He then excused himself to leave. Kakashi, sensing that Naruto was coming out of his sleep, decided to put his dog mask back on and return to his hidden position on the ceiling. Hiruzen calmly straightened out his Hokage outfit a little bit before taking a seat next to the bed. It wasn't long before the young blonde began to stir and yawn, as if he was waking up from a long and fulfilling night of sleep. The other two occupants of this room immediately noticed the changes in the little boy's cerulean blue eyes. They weren't as empty or soulless as before. They showed some of their usual brightness with some visible confusion as the boy took in his surroundings. Hokage-jiji? Naruto muttered in surprise as he saw the third and then surveyed the hospital room with a confused pout. What am I doing here? Did something happen? Sarutobi, Hiruzen, the third Hokage known as the famed god of shinobi and the professor, was suddenly stumped and silently cursed his stupidity at forgetting to ask Inoichi for details regarding the supposed accident that had the boy land in the hospital. He heard the tiniest bit of snickering and glanced menacingly in the direction of the hidden Kakashi. The corners of his lips barely twitched upward when he heard a gulp. He still got it. Naruto-kun, I'm glad you're okay, and you're in the hospital. I was told you were admitted here unconscious after you hit your head. What was the last thing that you remember? He tried to fish the fake event out without suspicion. He saw Kakashi shrug and did a SOSO gesture with his hand out the corner of his eyes. He frowned in slight offense. Maybe he should make the one-eyed Anbu a sensei for 3 brats as punishment. While the old man was contemplating unfair punishments, young Naruto was concentrating to remember what happened. I was walking through the park and I saw a girl trying to climb a tree. Naruto muttered as he continued to work through the fogginess in his head. All I could remember about her was that she had long brown hair. I didn't even see her face. I was watching her, and she suddenly screamed and slipped off. I ran toward her and tried to save her. I guess I hit my head when I jumped under her because that was the last thing I remember. The Hokage nodded empathically while inside he was considering giving Inoichi more pay for this. A brown-haired girl in this village? Needle in a haystack. Still, he'd make sure the boy wouldn't needlessly look for the girl. That's right, Naruto-kun. That child and her father brought you in asking for you to be admitted. That was 2 days ago, and you have been sleeping since then. That was a rather nasty lump you had on your head. The Hokage continued to spin off the event. He saw Naruto brighten up considerably at this act of kindness, which made his heart clench painfully. Just how deep was his need to be acknowledged? Is she still around? The child inquired hopefully. Unfortunately, not anymore. Hiruzen's heart almost broke at the boy's visible disappointment before he quickly continued. It turns out she's the daughter of a traveling merchant, and they have left the village. She was playing in that park to pass the time while her father did some business. She did leave the staff a message to pass on to you, however. Naruto perked his head up, waiting to hear the message. She wanted to thank you for saving her, and that she hopes to see you again eventually, the Hokage said with a warm smile. Naruto's smile was enough to brighten up the room. The third saw Kakashi give a thumb up for his acting. Maybe he'd put off making the Jounin a sensei for a while longer. Now, Naruto-kun, you get some rest and I have to get back to my duties. You will be released tomorrow morning. Get some sleep in the meantime, all right? The third stood up, getting ready to leave. Naruto gave an enthusiastic nod, his smile still plastered on his face as the old man stepped out and closed the door. Kakashi immediately appeared at his side. Keep an eye on Naruto-kun and let me know of any change. In the meantime, make a list of the stores and restaurants that kicked him out or overcharged him. I will personally take care of them. We're going to make sure things improve, if only a little, for him from here on. The Hokage dictated to the ANBU. The dog-masked man nodded as he took an orange book out of nowhere to begin reading it. The third suddenly put on a grin with a small blush on his cheeks. So, you get to that part with Ami-chan yet? Kakashi let out a perverted giggle. That was the best so far, Hokage-sama. I wonder how Jiraiya-sama got the research material for that? Suddenly, the temperature in the hallway chilled a few degrees. Both men noted this and looked around to see several angry female nurses and patients glaring at them as if they wanted them to combust on the spot. The two men gulped and quickly shined out, lest they suffer the women's wrath. Back in Naruto's room, the still smiling boy let out a long sigh as he watched the Hokage close the door. His fake smile faded like a wisp from his face as he leaned back into his bed. He could feel his crushing depression and shame crash over him like waves. Sorry, whatever you did in my head, I still remember everything. It didn't work and this still hurts so much. The blond boy trailed off, with his bright blue eyes dulling to near darkness as he curled into a ball and began shaking with silent sobs. Soon at Yamanaka Flowers, Inoichi let out a weary sigh as he took his shoes off in the entranceway of his home. A beautiful brown-haired woman with almost gem-like hazel eyes appeared to greet her husband with a chaste kiss. How was your day, darling? They called you away so suddenly? Yamanaka-kana asked with some concern at her husband's bedraggled expression. I can't tell you since Hokage-sama declared this a village secret. I'm sorry, my Haim. Kana nodded in understanding, knowing this was quite serious. Inoichi's expression then turned determined. However, whatever happened today has finally convinced me to get off my ass and really do something about our blonde comrade, he said resolutely. Since there were so few blondes in this village with many coming from their clan, Kana and Inoichi took to calling Uzumaki Naruto their blonde comrade. It was one of their favorite inside jokes. Kana was surprised to hear this and frowned. She was sharp enough to know this secret had something to do with Naruto if Inoichi just brought him up out of the blue, and that it was bad enough to shake her usually composed husband up. She was coming to many conclusions, all of which she didn't like at all. How? The morons running that orphan's office have blocked us at every avenue whenever we try to adopt him. If only Hokage-sama would just use his power to force it through. You know as well I do that if he did that, then his political enemies will use this to go to the fire daimyo and raise a stink. The Hokage may be in charge of the village, but the daimyo still carry more power than him. He's also a civilian and will likely side with those bastards if they present a convincing argument. All this will result in his Hokage-sama losing political credibility and power. As much as I want to do something for young Naruto, we can't risk this with that old war hawk Danzo chomping at every bit. Fucking politics. Kana spat out quietly with a nasty scowl, irritated enough to curse. Inoichi smiled and put his hands on her shoulders to kiss her forehead, getting a pleased hum out of her. All we can do is bide our time and wait for the opportune moment. Shikaku and Chuza definitely do not like this either, and neither does most of the other clan heads, too. He muttered before smirking ferally. Which is why when the moment comes and it will attack ferociously. Danzo and the others will not be able to do anything, and they'll be lame ducks before long. Kana grinned devilishly and hugged her darling tightly around his waist. You know that kind of talk is a big turn-on for me. She murmured lowly before kissing him softly. In the meantime, the adoption route isn't working. We'll have to go another way. The blond man declared as he moved out of the embrace and stepped into the living room. What are you thinking? The brunette asked softly at his side and saw that he was gazing lovingly at the living room's large bay window overlooking the street in front of their ground-floor flower shop. Sitting on its cushioned surface was an adorable young girl with shoulder-length pale blonde hair staring out at a lone cloud high in the clear blue sky. She was swaying her head gently side to side and humming a nonsensical but happy-sounding tune. Friendship. Inoichi declared quietly with a prideful expression he reserved only for their beloved daughter. Kana grinned even more devilishly than just a moment ago as she hugged her darling's right arm tightly to her ample chest. That brain of yours is why I married you, my darling, she whispered into his ear seductively. Her husband grinned roguishly down at her, making her shiver with excitement. Only that, my beautiful Haim? I suppose your devastatingly handsome looks and wonderful personality are nice bonuses too. They chuckled, getting one young Yamanaka Ino to stop her humming and turn her head to find her parents standing in the living room's doorway staring and smiling at each other in a way that usually resulted in her having to leave the room for some reason. The cute blonde girl frowned briefly at the couple for interrupting her super awesome fun singing time with their adult things, and turned back to follow the lone cloud with her striking pale blue eyes. She began humming again with a bright grin. She never bothered to notice her parents sneaking away for a small dose of their own fun. Land of Wind. At around the same time in Sunagakure, the shinobi village protecting Land of Wind, 8-year-old Sabaka no Tamari was walking down a street with her family. She had dirty blonde hair done up in 4 separate ponytails, giving her a unique hairstyle easily recognizable by many. She wore a simple but expensive-looking dark blue kimono that brought out her teal eyes, and she was carrying a small ornate fan in the sash. It was a memento of her deceased mother. Sabaka no Kurura passed away after giving birth to her youngest brother, Gaara. Tamari still never forgave her father along with the 2 elders of the village council for the circumstances that led to her beloved mother's death. On her left was her 7-year-old brother, Kankuro. He had brown hair, wore a simple t-shirt and cargo shorts, and he had a nice face. He would have an easy time getting women to notice him in the future if she didn't have to wonder about his growing obsession with creepy puppets and makeups. On her right was her brownish red-haired father, the Yandame Kazekage of this village in his full Kazekage robes. Despite his somewhat short stature, there was no denying the power that radiated from him. His ability to draw out and control gold dust from anywhere in the environment around him was the only reason the village hadn't gone bankrupt in the years since its massive losses in the Second Great War. All this was also in spite of the Wind Daimyo beginning to send more missions to their current ally, Konoha, due to its lower rates. Next to her father on the other side was her youngest brother who just turned 6, Gaara. He was basically a mini version of the Kazekage, with short and shaggy dark red hair and the same blank expressions on their faces. They even shared the same black rings around their light green eyes, making them look somewhat like raccoons. He wore a simple black full-body suit with a white tunic draped over his right shoulder and wrapped around his waist. He also carried a small gourd, full of his near-sentient sand, on his back. Everyone on the street gave the family a wide berth. Tamari knew it wasn't out of respect for the family, who were basically royalty in this village. It was because they feared Gaara due to the fact that he was the host of the Ichibi, or one-tailed beast, named Shikaku. At the urgings of the elders in the council, the Kazekage tried to increase the quality of the village's shinobi force to attract more business from the Wind Lord by sealing the Ichibi into Gaara still in his mother's womb. This led to complications during the childbirth, resulting in Kurura passing away as she held the tiny and frail Gaara. Tamari gritted her teeth at the memory. Since her mother's death, the family became broken and dysfunctional. Temari and Kankuro barely managed a tiny semblance of a sibling relationship, while living in constant fear of their youngest brother's occasional psychotic episodes. Their father became cold and distant, deciding to focus all of his attention on the village instead of his children. The worst off from that death was Gaara himself, however. Due to his sentient sand controlled by the Ichibi inside him, other people feared him and kept away from him. At first, Gaara wanted to make friends, but his sand kept accidentally hurting and killing some people. The longer this went on, the more desperate the red-haired boy got, until he was finally broken some time ago by the betrayal of his caretaker, his mother's brother Yashimaru, the only one to ever show him compassion in his lonely existence. From what Temari knew of that event, their uncle tried to kill Gaara out of revenge for his sister, and upon failing, he told the little boy that his mother hated him, cursing him throughout the childbirth until she died, and that his own father ordered the assassination attempt. That was what broke Gaara's hold on his sanity, and he had his sand crush his uncle to death. He then swore to live only for himself and went around validating his existence by killing at will. Since then, the village feared and hated him even more. Temari let out a sigh. How did her family become this fucked up? She didn't even understand the reason for this walk together. They rarely did anything remotely family-like since her mother's death. She hated her father, but wouldn't go against his wishes, so that was why she was walking among them, ignoring the villagers' stares. Out of nowhere, she heard several soft thuds. What was that? She looked to her right to see some kunais embedded into Gaara's suddenly raised sand wall, their sharp tips inches from his face. He wasn't expecting that, and suddenly screamed in surprise and rage. His sand then flared up and quickly shot for a rooftop close to the Sabaka family. In response, the Kazekage immediately shoved Temari and Kankuro into a nook between two buildings with a muttered warning to stay there. Gaara's shrill screams continued to fill the air as everyone around them panicked and immediately retreated into their buildings or hiding spots. The last thing Temari saw before entering the nook was Gaara's sand dragging a surprised Suna shinobi down off the roof of a nearby building by his leg, his face frozen in terror. The blonde girl noticed offhandedly that the Kazekage had already taken his stance calmly, almost too prepared for this sudden attack. It was as if he had been expecting this. As she hid in the nook with Kankuro with her whole body trembling at the rising killing intent in the air, she instinctively wrapped her arms around her similarly trembling brother in a feeble attempt at protection. It wasn't long until Gaara's screams stopped. After a moment of hearing the soft sounds of shifting sand and groaning, the two children almost considered peeking out of the nook to see what was happening. That notion was immediately shot to hell. Loud and blood-curdling screams of terror and agony filled the air, and the two poor children trembled even more. Temari could smell the scent of urine coming from Kankuro, but she paid it no mind. She wouldn't blame him since she was about to piss herself in terror too. Suddenly a sickening ripping sound was heard even over the shrill screaming, and there was a wet thump somewhere. One more incident of such disgusting noise followed another few seconds later. The agonized screams were no more by this point, so the third ripping sound, longer and even more revoltingly wet this time, was burned into Temari's memory forever with total clarity. Trembling, she finally spared a glance at what she could see outside the nook. There was nothing but an empty and dusty street from what she could see. She would regret her decision to look outside a moment later when she saw an apparently discarded corpse suddenly land in front of the nook with a wet thump as if it was a gift to the children trapped inside. Only that it wasn't a whole person. His left arm was missing, leaving behind a bloody socket, and his body was ripped in half at the waist, allowing her to see the insides spilling out. She also easily noted his spinal cord with some tendrils of nerve sticking out at its torn end, as if they were searching for the other half of the body. Despite this being only a half of the body, there was so much dark red blood pooling under the remains, soaking into the dusty dirt covering the street. However, the most horrific thing she saw was the frozen look of terror on his face, with sand dribbling out of his wide-open mouth and nostrils, as if he had seen pure evil itself. Taking this sight in, she finally let her bladder control go and opened her mouth wide in a silent scream as her body instinctively prevented her from making any sound in pure self-preservation. The last thing she remembered before fainting due to the stress of this horror were seeing the glitter of gold dust floating from the ground as her father apparently prepared to subdue Gaara. The last thing she heard in the darkness enveloping her somewhat lovingly was her youngest brother's insane cackling. Somewhere in an abandoned laboratory in Land of the Sea. "Are okay? Wake!" was all the 12-year-old Mitarashi Enko heard through the fogginess of her consciousness as she slowly woke up. She felt some light slapping on her right cheek. Her light brown eyes hurt as she opened them slowly to see a dim light directly overhead. She could barely make out two moving outlines at her sides. "Wah!" was all she could manage to say before she was struck silent by her sudden inability to move her limbs. "Don't worry, we'll get you out of this. Just remain calm," one of the two outlines spoke in a soft feminine voice. "Why should we? She's that traitor's whore. We should just cut her throat and be done with it." The other outline growled in an angry male voice before the female hushed him harshly. "Wait, what? Where's Sensei?" "Last thing I remember was when I was leaving with him on our training trip," Enko thought as she tried to get up again only to be restrained by something. She shifted her head down for a look at her body. What she saw shocked her so much she shrieked loudly. She found herself completely nude and strapped to a cold metal table, her arms and legs restrained in a spread eagle fashion. She panicked as she strained and failed to cover herself up instinctively. So complete was her terror that she failed to notice that her body looked more grown up compared to when she left with her sensei. "Get her something to cover up now," the female outline hissed at her male counterpart. "Why should a fucking traitor care about her ma dash?" was all the man retorted before the female struck him hard on his masked face. It was a thunderous crack echoing through the large room, and it actually made Enko pause briefly in her struggling. "That was an order. Is that understood?" The female's whisper was low and deadly. Obviously, the male outline responded with a nod since the woman continued even when Enko didn't hear any vocal reply. "After you find something for her, do not say a single word for the rest of this mission or I will have you up on insubordination." The female ground out through gritted teeth over the young girl's continued whimpering. The stunned male silently bowed and left Enko's line of sight. The young girl continued to whimper and struggle at the restraints even as the female-voiced outline tried to shush her gently while working to free her. After a long minute of struggling, Enko was finally freed of her restraints. She then immediately curled up into a fetal ball and began to sob loudly with the female outline trying to soothe her with a gentle hand on her back. At this point, the male returned with an old discarded blanket found somewhere else in the lab. He then quickly left the immediate area to stand guard while his female squad leader spoke to the young girl. After what seemed to be hours, but actually just a few minutes of crying, the purple-haired girl finally regained her composure somewhat and stopped trembling, feeling less exposed with the blanket covering her. She slowly sat up to take a glance around and saw that she was in a large experiment room, apparently abandoned if papers strewn about and missing equipment were any indication. Even in the dim lighting, she could make out 9 other tables just like the one she was found lying on, and each had a corpse strapped to it. All of them apparently died not too long ago, and were beginning to show effects of decomposition. Was she the only one who survived whatever experimentation she went through? If that was the case, why was she left behind? Her eyes finally adjusted to the dim light, and she took a good look at her female rescuer. Her savior turned out to be a Konoha ANBU. The taller masked woman was wearing a dark blue armored and sleeveless outfit, showing her bare upper arms with a tattoo on each shoulder denoting her as an ANBU and a captain of a squad respectively. She had beautiful long purple hair somewhat lighter in hue compared to her own purple hair. Finally, Enko noted this ANBU's mask to be shaped and painted like a cat's face. She took a shuddering breath, resolving to figure out what happened to her. "Nico-san, I don't know what's going on. Where am I?" Enko forced the words out of her throat, hoarse and dry from her panic a few minutes ago. The cat-masked ANBU seemed to take a moment to consider her response. "Before we start on that, I need you to answer a couple questions honestly. I'm afraid what you say now will affect what's going to happen to you from here on. I hope for your sake that you're innocent in this whole thing." She began in an even tone. Enko grew more confused but nodded anyway. "First, what is your name and age?" "Midarashi Enko. I'm 9. Enko stated quickly, and the older woman was taken aback at that reply. She already knew who this girl was, so no surprise there. However, Enko definitely did not have the body of a 9-year-old from what she glimpsed earlier. This girl had already begun developing her bust and hips, plus there was an odd mark on the left side her neck. However, the ANBU didn't sense any sign of lying. "Okay, Enko-chan, what was the last thing you remember?" she inquired, trepidation clear in her voice. "I was on the road with Orochimaru-sensei. We just left Konoha in the middle of the night a few days ago." Nico was absolutely stunned to hear this. If this was true, this meant that this girl had the last 3 years of her life wiped out. She had to ask one more question and she'd decide if she would have to kill this young girl right now, or take her back to Konoha for more questions. When you left, did Orochimaru ever say anything about why he was suddenly leaving? We know it was a last-minute departure. Did you get an explanation? She asked with a slight edge in her voice as she subconsciously slipped her right hand into her leg holster for a kunai. Anko was puzzled at the lack of honorific for her sensei but paid it no mind. Sensei said that he was taking me with him on a long-term training trip and told me we were leaving at that time because he just felt like it. It was typical of him, so I didn't think much of it. Why do you ask? Did something happen to Sensei? Has he been captured and experimented on too? Sensing no malice from Anko as she heard genuine concern in these rapid questions, the ANBU let out a silent sigh of relief and moved her hand away from the kunai to put it on one of the young girl's hands. Anko-chan, I'm sorry, but there's no easy way to say this and I'm just going to let it all out now. You'll learn more about this while we escort you back to Konoha. The night you left with Orochimaru, he betrayed the village. He was caught doing inhumane experiments on kidnapped villagers and shinobi. He then escaped from Hokage-sama and Jiraiya-sama, and must have taken you along at the very last minute. He then apparently fed you lies about his reasons for leaving. If you had admitted knowing about his betrayal at any point up till now, I'd have killed you right now for treason instead of simply questioning you. The Catmaster Ambu spoke, her heart breaking as she watched the young teen's face change from confusion to shock, then to absolute betrayal. She had to continue before she lost her resolve. That's not all. He apparently thought of you as an experiment, not his student, because he used you in whatever this was. This room is part of a laboratory complex that the Intelligence Division believed to have belonged to Orochimaru. We were sent to investigate here and that's how we found you. You're the only one alive in this entire place. Anko's expression continued to break down as her light brown eyes began to leak tears non-stop. Lastly, it's been 3 years since Orochimaru's betrayal. You're not 9, you should be around 12 now. The ANBU quickly got out as she watched Anko's spiral into total despair with sympathy. The young girl couldn't believe it. Her sensei, the one she looked up to and admired for years, used her and threw her aside like a piece of trash. She lost 3 years of her life. Worst of all, she's been associated with a traitor, and she now felt dirty and tainted. After a few minutes of trembling and sobbing, she turned her despair into pure and unrestrained rage. I'm going to kill that son of a-h-h-h-h! She suddenly cried out at the top of her lung, unable to bear the pain of what felt like red-hot fire growing throughout her body as she clutched futilely at the strange mark on her neck. She slumped back onto the table and started thrashing all over it in pure agony. The shocked ANBU tried to hold her down and immediately stuck 3 of her fingers into the girl's mouth, preventing her from biting her tongue off in this pain. She then noticed the strange mark on the girl's neck glowing red, and it seemed to be wriggling around a little. Another loud scream of agony ripped through the abandoned base and the sea surrounding it. Konohagakure, the Hyuga compound, the large Hyuga clan meeting hall, was where the elders and leaders of both main and branch families met to discuss any issue about the clan or the village. Right now, it was filled to near full capacity with many members of both branches awaiting news about a special event happening now. The young clan heiress Hyuga Hinata was one of the many members kneeling properly on the well-polished main floor, her hands clenching tightly at the fabric of her richly appointed lavender kimono, as she willed herself not to run away from the harsh scrutiny of her older relatives. The reason why she was nervous was because she was left alone, away from her parents who usually protected her from those that hated her shyness and gentleness. These were traits apparently unbecoming of a Hyuga heiress in the eyes of the more arrogant and prideful members of the clan. Ever since Hinata was born, all she knew was scorn from most of the clan's main branch for her kind nature. All Hyuga clan members were supposed to be strong and take pride in their clan being arguably the most powerful in the village, always competing with the Uchiha clan for that position. The fact that she hadn't shown the required amount of clan pride was a point of offense for the older Hyugas. Instead, she preferred to see herself as equals with others, including the branch members. This was a sore subject for many, especially when a branded branch member named Niji was clearly the clan's rising prodigy, not her or any one of the other main branch members. Meanwhile, the Uchiha clan head Fugaku already had a talented child in Itachi, who was just promoted to ANBU at age 10 and would make captain rank before long. The only solace Hinata got from the constant harassment by the entire clan she might be in charge of one day was her mother and father. Her mother loved her unconditionally and allowed her to be who she wanted to be. Her father, while stern in public, cared for her deeply and refused to take the elders' negative words about her to heart. She believed that she would survive even the most horrid treatment, as long as she had the love and support of her parents. This day was grating on her already low self-confidence, however. Who knows, maybe this new child will replace that weak girl and we can finally have a proper heiress. She'll be branded and thrown in with the branch members she apparently adores so much. One elder was overheard speaking somewhat loudly. Several branch members in earshot, including young Niji and his father, frowned. This cruel banter was only a small part of all Hinata had to hear throughout the day, and her resolve was starting to break. However, she had to remain strong for her parents, who were currently occupied with giving birth to a new child. She knew she would be rewarded for her perseverance with having a younger sister to love and grow up with. She also hoped the bleak news about her beloved mother's condition would improve soon. Finally, after what seemed like eternity, the main doors to the meeting hall slowly opened to reveal one Hyuga Hayashi, Hinata's father. The entire hall fell silent with his presence, since being the powerful head of the clan demanded that respect. Hinata almost jumped up in delight, and had to work to keep her composure as a proper Hyuga in front of the others. Any hope of this being a happy occasion was shattered when she saw something wrong in his grim expression. It can't be, oh, please don't let it be true. Hayashi was feeling numb and broken on the inside, despite keeping up the charade of a powerful man on the outside. He had known that there would be complications with this childbirth due to forewarnings by many doctors, and were prepared for whatever could happen. However, he hoped with every fiber of his being that his beloved wife would survive the childbirth, and they would be welcoming a healthy baby girl into this world together. The baby, now named Hanabi, did survive and was in perfect health. However, Hyuga Hitomi did not live through the process. Hayashi had to allow himself a long few minutes to shed his tears over his wife's covered body and regain his composure. It would not do him any good to look weak in front of the other main branch members, now that he needed to be stronger than ever for his two beloved daughters. Sometimes he wondered if he was truly in control of the clan, rather than the elders who tried to run things from behind the scene. As he stood in the doorway, he spared a glance at his eldest daughter, and his resolve almost shattered into a million pieces as he watched the painful realization slowly creep up on her face, with her pale lavender-tinted eyes widening and becoming watery. However, she hadn't allowed any tear to escape yet. He would have been proud of her for being able to keep up a strong appearance this long if the situation didn't require the opposite reaction in his opinion, which was to let it all out and fall into a sobbing heap. He would allow her that chance soon. "I bring you mixed news. We have given birth to a very healthy infant. Our newest daughter's eyes are excellent, and she will be a strong member of this clan. She shall be called Hanabi, and it is my hope that this clan will help her grow into an outstanding individual." The clan head spoke with a hint of fatherly pride, but there was no happiness in his voice. No one in the room had said anything or moved to congratulate him. They were obviously sensing there was more to this. He continued, "However, due to complications during childbirth, my wife Hyuga Hitomi passed away peacefully in her sleep just after she had enough time to hold Hanabi in her arms and name her." The room remained deathly silent. Only one sound could be heard, and it was coming from Hinata. She was slowly grinding her teeth with trembling eyes, and her hands were now clutching desperately at the fabric of her kimono as she was trying to keep her composure for a while longer. "With this sad news, there will be no celebration, and I wish to retire with my daughters to our house to grieve in privacy for the rest of the day." Hayashi finished with a tone that left no room for objections. He gestured for Hinata to rise from her kneeling position and allowed her to walk past him as he closed the doors. The entire room then broke into whispers. "My daughter, you may go ahead. I will retrieve your new sister and join you soon." Hayashi spoke with as much affection he could spare in his tone. Hinata did not object as they split up, and she quickly picked up her pace toward their house. Hayashi arrived a few minutes later with a tiny bundle in his arms to hear loud sobs and wails filling the house's common area. After a brief second of searching, he found his eldest daughter kneeling on the floor by the living room table. Her head was buried in her arms, resting on top of it as she continued to cry loudly, her tears wetting her kimono that became loose and disheveled from apparently running the rest of the way here. As if sensing the mood, the little bundle in Hayashi's arms named Hanabi began to wail loudly too. Sighing painfully, the father of two could do nothing but take his seat by Hinata with a soothing hand on her back as he allowed a few tears to run down his cheeks as well. Chapter 2: The Beginning of a Beautiful Friendship. Nighttime in Kanehigakure. Sometime later, Uzumaki Naruto, 8 years old, was taking a leisurely walk through the quiet walkways of the clan's district, admiring the beautiful full moon in all its glory on this night. He was heading home to his crappy apartment from the Nara compound, the residence of one of his close friends, Naruto Shikamaru. He had been invited over for dinner with the Naras and to play several shogi matches afterward with the pineapple-haired young heir. The blonde found it hilarious to see his incredibly lazy friend, a bona fide genius, be both fascinated and frustrated by his unconventional tactics, even though he ended up losing each match anyway. He considered it a victory on his part if he forced the pineapple-haired lazy ass to take his famous thinking pose, in which he sat still with eyes closed and his hands together in an odd gesture, during the match. Smiling fondly at the memory of Shikamaru, Naruto wondered how he managed to turn his life around quickly and made friends so soon after that fateful night. Despite Inoichi's best efforts, he still remembered everything. Every drop of spraying blood, the sound of his wrist tearing open with the jagged blade of the rusty and discarded kunai he found in an alley, and his surrogate grandfather crying over his bloody body. He had no idea how, but he knew as soon as he woke up that the memories planted in his head were fakes and the real ones remained. The fake events were just foreign objects in his mind that he recognized immediately. Naruto could have thrown a huge fit with the Hokage for messing with his head, but he understood why upon seeing his surrogate grandfather's anxious face. The third simply wanted the young boy to be well and happier. He then did a better acting job than the Hokage ever did to assuage the old man's fears about his mental state. After the third left the room, Naruto then spent all day in the hospital bed thinking about what happened the night before, and decided to push down the pain and loneliness just a while longer for his surrogate grandfather's sake. The crushing depression he felt about what he attempted didn't make that decision easy, though. He wondered how to even begin, and it wasn't long until he remembered that tall and blonde ponytailed man he saw in his fake memories. It was soon after he was released that he ran into the same man around the village, and found his name to be Yamanaka Inoichi. He was then quickly introduced to the man's daughter. Yamanaka Ino became quite important to him quickly. In fact, he honestly thought he would have gone back to try to finish the job for the final time if he hadn't met her just in time. It also probably helped his fragile mental state at that time that he developed a small crush on her because he enjoyed her genuine cheerfulness and playful nature compared to the fake smiles he used to display in the past. They became fast friends and he was introduced soon after to Shikamaru and the eternally jolly as long as the word fat wasn't heard Akimichi Choji. The four of them got along great even though they annoyed each other with Ino's bossiness, Shikamaru's laziness, Choji's over-the-top gentleness, and Naruto's pranks. He remembered being scared out of his wits when he was first invited over for dinner with the three clans when they gathered for their bi-monthly dinner party. After some prodding from his friends and Ino's use of force dash, he finally relented to the invitation. To say it was an eye-opening experience to eat dinner with other friendly people was as much an understatement as saying one Hatake Kakashi liked porn a tiny bit. Naruto's social ineptness, especially his poor table manners, endeared him to the clans, and they took it upon themselves to beat some etiquettes and common senses about society into him whenever he came for over with any of his friends. Yamanaka matriarch Kana and Nara matriarch Yoshino especially made sure he was well educated, much to his hidden chagrin. Choji's clan at least made sure he was well fed. Thanks to their hard work, he turned out to be a genuinely bright and friendly individual who had no issue with anyone as long as they didn't cause him any trouble. In the years since meeting those three kids and their clans, the blonde's quality of life improved considerably, and he found himself genuinely happy these days, despite still enduring the hatred of most of the village. Despite all that, it still took him a long time to truly pull himself out of the depression and guilt that came with trying to take his own life. But he felt lately that part of his life was finally over, and he could say that awful memory was just that, a memory, and he honestly could not imagine why he even considered it in the first place. To think, all it took was a curious girl declaring "let's play," to pull him from the very edge of the abyss. Pulling himself out of his thoughts, Naruto noticed he was near the Hyuga compound and gulped loudly. He never liked the entrance guard's white pupilless eyes following his every movement as he walked past, stony expressions seemingly forever chiseled onto their faces. He wondered if the cute girl he met earlier in the year lived inside this compound. 3 months ago Naruto grunted loudly as he found himself tackled to the dusty ground of the neighborhood playground by an overenthusiastic Ino, as she made to tag him. "Oh! Take it easy on me, Ino-chan! Where in the rules did it say it was okay for you to tackle someone in the middle of a simple game of tag?" he yelled from under his friend's weight. Ino smirked as she stood and smoothed over her shoulder-length platinum blonde hair to make it less disheveled. She was wearing a purple t-shirt with white capris. Where in the rules did it say it wasn't allowed? She shot back impishly, as she lightly dusted herself off. Naruto had no retort for that and resorted to annoyed murmurings about new rule forbidding Ino-chan from ever playing. His fellow blonde just giggled cutely before she noticed the time, and it was getting late. Naruto, I have to get home to help mommy out. You gonna be okay? She got a bright smile and a nod from the blonde prankster, and then left after a quick hug goodbye. When she disappeared, Naruto let out a sigh with a small blush as he remained unable to contemplate just what the cute blonde girl was to him exactly. He knew they were friends for certain, but he also felt slightly closer to her than he was with their two male friends. He hoped he'd get answers one day, if they ever came. I guess I'll go home and treat myself to some ramen cups. Wait, that's not so bad, he exclaimed with a picture of a ramen cup in each eye and drool coming out a corner of his mouth as he realized this lucky development. Before he left the playground, though, he heard scuffling in the bushes nearby. Curious, he decided to check out the disturbance and stepped carefully into the bushes. As he got closer, he heard several boys' boisterous voices and a whisper-quiet girl's frightened voice. Forcing his way through the leaves, he stumbled upon a group of 3 boys ganging up on a small and timid girl with short indigo hair. He saw that she was wearing a simple black training outfit and was quite cute, but what his eyes quickly locked onto were her beautiful white eyes tinted with a hint of lavender. They were wide and trembling with fear. All of her would-be bullies turned to the new annoyance. What? Don't bother us and beat it, shrimp. We're just asking this prissy Hyuga why she thought her clan is superior over the rest of us. The largest of the 3 boys tried to dismiss Naruto with a lazy wave. The blonde would have none of that, and he sure as hell wasn't going to take having his height be made fun of. He let out a battle cry and launched into the group, smashing a fist into the nose of the apparent leader. A few minutes later found poor Naruto bruised and winded as he laid spread eagle on the ground with the bullies, having grown bored with him and the still untouched Hyuga girl, leaving to find something better to do. The timid girl stared at the heaving form of her blonde savior in wonder for a moment, and gathered the courage to speak up. Ayano, I am sorry why you had to jump in. It's because I am weak. The girl forced her words out in a tiny and stuttering voice Naruto had to strain to hear. After a moment of catching his breath, the boy slowly rose to his feet and dusted himself off a little bit. After another moment of tense silence, he finally spoke up. Don't worry, strong or weak. I won't stand for seeing someone hurt if I can help it, he declared with a foxy grin and a raised fist. The girl's cheeks reddened considerably upon seeing the grin. She wanted to know more about this boy, but before she could introduce herself. Milady, it is time to return. A deep male voice echoed throughout the forest. The girl's pale eyes widened before she reluctantly bowed and left. Naruto shrugged this off and began making his way home once again, wondering about that girl. He thought she was as cute as Ino, and seemed very nice if not a little weird. It wasn't long before he forgot about the incident thanks to the power of ramen. Present Naruto made it past the 2 Hyugas guarding the main gate and was walking along one of the compound's long perimeter walls. He realized it was already almost midnight according to the bright full moon overhead. Wow, that last shogi match took longer than I expected. As he walked in silence, he heard scraping of feet on a rough surface, likely roof tiles, but it was barely there. He doubted any other human could have heard this without chakra enhancement. He learned one day that he was blessed with heightened senses compared to other people because he was always the first to sense anything long before others noticed. He just never realized this until he was finally spending time with his peers and noticed his senses weren't exactly the norm. He also discovered at the same time that his sense of smell was about as good as a normal dog's, which he made use of this moment with a breeze blowing over him from the compound. He sniffed the air deeply and caught a slight hint of lavender. Was that a fresh shampoo scent? Naruto narrowed his blue eyes as he scanned his surroundings. The scraping and scuffling sound was getting closer, likely from the other side of the wall. Deciding to follow his instincts, he pressed his back up flat against the compound wall to try to blend into the shadow it was casting from the moonlight. The scent of lavender became stronger as the scuffling got closer. Then it all fell silent. A long minute of waiting followed with thick and stuffy tension filling the night air as Naruto rapidly shifted his eyes right and left down the length of the wall on either side. Finally, he heard a light thump as a pair of feet carefully landed onto the street from the top of the wall, and it was like an explosive tag going off right next to him since he was concentrating so hard on his hearing. He held back a pained gasp and an impulse to jump in surprise as he snapped his head to his right and glimpsed a tall figure clad entirely in a black stealth outfit. His body shifted into a ready state as his eyes searched the figure and zeroed in on a small bundle in the figure's left arm. He noted right away that it was a little girl in a white nightgown, and she was tied up tightly and gagged. Her lavender-tinted eyes were wide open with helpless terror. Few minutes ago in Hinata's bedroom, Hyuga Hinata was glad for this kind of day, a day in which the entire clan was busy entertaining a diplomat from the land of lightning's Kumogakure. Earlier in the day, the diplomats signed a tentative peace agreement with Konohagakure to help each other in certain aspects like aids, sharing some missions, and making some military concessions. That kind of dinner event kept the clan busy with preparations. A busy clan then would not harass Hinata as much, so she relished these days, which were still too few and far in between for her liking. The only things she had to worry about this day were to dress up formally, keep silent, and be composed at the large dining table, and that was it. After she took her bath with Anabi, she put her younger sister to bed before slipping into her own futon. Her heavy eyelids began to droop, with her last thoughts being of that blonde-haired boy with the gorgeous blue eyes, cute whisker marks, and that heart-stopping grin. The next moment, her pale eyes snapped wide open as she felt a rough hand cover her mouth and a sharp blade against her neck. She stared right up at the face of a large black-clad man and saw the clear message in his cold and dark eyes. "Make a sound and you die." Her entire body froze at once, and she couldn't breathe. So complete was her terror that she barely noticed being pulled out of her bed, then tied up and gagged quickly. She only registered bits of the scenery changing as she was carried under the assailant's arm from her bedroom to the compound's rooftops, too terrified to think about anything. It was only when, upon landing on the walkway outside the compound, she locked eyes with a pair of striking blue eyes floating in the shadows by the wall nearby that she came to life. They widened in surprise and shone brightly in the moonlight, and she knew they were the same eyes she daydreamt about only a moment ago. Somehow, she felt her terror abiding, and unconsciously began to struggle. She fully realized now what was happening and decided she didn't want to be taken away from her father and sister, and would do anything to prevent that now. For some reason, she didn't want to just give up in front of these blue eyes. Naruto saw the girl begin to struggle after they locked eyes. He immediately recognized her as the indigo-haired girl he met 3 months ago and gritted his teeth. This was a bad situation, and he knew he was no match for that black figure. He didn't smell a single trace of this man, a good sign of an experienced shinobi. He would die before he even got the first syllable out if he tried to alert someone, but he had to save that girl. Naruto would be the first out of anyone to know that if she disappeared, she would suffer greatly. Having been through so much already by now, he wasn't going to allow that to happen to someone else if he could help it. As he watched carefully from his hiding spot, he noticed the shinobi was growing frustrated with the girl's struggling, and was getting quite distracted. This was his chance as he took a steady breath and reached for something he happened to glimpse lying on the ground by the wall. The black-clad man was growing irritated with the Hyuga girl struggling in his hold. Since when did she instantly grow a backbone? He gathered from observing his primary target at the dinner earlier tonight that she was a cowardly and submissive girl. He thought she was going to be the easier of the two Hyuga females to kidnap for his secret mission in an effort to acquire more Kekkai Genkai carriers for Kumogakure. His disguise as a diplomat was a ruse in order to study the security of the Hyuga compound up close so he could attempt the snatch after he returned to his hotel room. What would happen to the young girl and the shitstorm that had come when news of this got out, he didn't care. He was happy to serve the raikage, and could almost taste the glory and fame that came with being the one to bring the famed Byakugan to his village. Whap! That was the last thought he had before he heard a loud fleshly smack and felt pure agony like no other even in his long career as a shinobi fill his entire body all at once. Pain so great he almost swallowed his tongue in shock. He barely noticed that this ungodly pain originated mostly from a certain pair of balls hanging between his legs. The last thing he saw before his eyes rolled up toward the top of his head was a long piece of stick wedged tightly between his legs. "Why, is it there?" A young blonde boy almost had to wince in sympathy as he finished taking a full-strength swing with the long and thick stick that he found nearby into the man's completely unguarded family jewels from behind. The nin slowly sank to his knees with a strained groan as his arms instinctively reached for his prized treasure, dropping the tied-up Hyuga girl in the process. Naruto was waiting for this and caught her before she hit the ground. At that moment, they locked eyes again and he saw tears of relief and joy dribbling from the girl's beautiful eyes. He ripped the gag out of her mouth, and she immediately buried her face into the boy's chest with happy cries of thanks. His cheeks warmed up at the praise and close contact. However, he had no time to think on this since the man would recover quickly. "It's all right. I'll get help for you," the blonde assured as he used some effort to carry the tied-up girl as far as he could from the man, who was still in a quivering heap. He then inhaled in all the air his considerably large lungs were able to take. "Oh, aye! That guy in black's touching the pretty Hyuga girl in weird places," could be heard echoing throughout the entire village of Konohagakure. In an unrelated matter, all fathers of young girls suddenly felt compelled to check in on their precious daughters at this time, just to be sure. Hinata was stunned into silence with mixed feelings about this. She was blushing at being called pretty, but she was also embarrassed by the possible misunderstandings about having been touched in weird places, whatever they were. Naruto only had to wait one whole second before he heard the thunderous crash of someone smashing through a solid wall. That was immediately followed by a man's loud and terrifying roar of pure primal rage from inside the compound walls. "Where is my daughter? I will slaughter you like an animal!" The entire compound lit up at once, and Naruto had to snicker. He figured something like this would happen after years of dealing with Ino's father and his overprotective nature. Apparently, this was something only a father and a daughter shared. With his sensitive hearing, he heard thundering footsteps zeroing on this location fast. Good, he and the girl should be able to get out of this uninjured. You goddamn brat! I'll kill you!" Startled, Naruto quickly turned around and instinctively pushed the tied-up girl onto the ground behind him. He only had enough time to see the man in black standing on shaking legs, with one hand clearly wrapped around his abused nuts and the other outstretched in front, before he felt a small twinge in his chest and heard a wet squelch. He then heard the girl cry out in terror from behind. Why was she screaming like that? At that moment, a tall and enraged pale-eyed man with long straight black hair leapt over the wall and landed between the two children and the surprised black-clad man. If it wasn't for the seriousness of the situation, it would have been hilarious to see a man of high nobility standing barefoot and bare-chested on the walkway in his white silk pajama pants, shredded and dirted by his alternative to using a door just a moment ago, not to mention his wild and disheveled hair. "You!" The new arrival growled out wrathfully as he caught sight of the kidnapper. Before the black-clad man could get a word out, the Hyuga man snarled and charged at the assailant with his Byakugan blaring. In under a second he struck multiple times with fatal precision as all chakra-enhanced strikes were aimed at the forehead, throat, lungs, kidneys, and heart. It was all over so quickly when the black-clad man fell, already dead, into a broken heap with so much dark blood pooling underneath that the moon reflected off it easily. Naruto had to admire the way that powerful man quickly dealt with the kidnapper. This man also had to be the girl's father too, from the relief clearly displayed in his eyes upon seeing the girl safe and sound, if only tied up for the moment. Though the blonde couldn't understand why they changed to extreme alarm upon shifting their gaze to him. Before he could say anything in greeting, his head instantly became light, his eyelids felt heavy, and it felt like he was falling slowly to the right. He didn't understand this. He should have been perfectly all right. Was this why the girl behind him was still crying out in anguish? He watched rather than felt as his body hit the ground in slow motion, first with his right knee, then his hip followed by the shoulder, and finally his temple tapped against the cold pavement of the walkway. He couldn't fathom why he wasn't able to move his limbs anymore now. Finally, after a moment of panicked confusion, he used all his waning strength to glance down at his twining chest and finally found the cause. A small kunai was embedded into the very center of it, almost up to the handle, courtesy of the black-clad man before his brutal death. It was this damn thing. I need to pull it out, he thought, clearly going into total shock. But no matter what he tried, he couldn't muster the strength to move even a finger. He needed to remove this bothersome thing so the girl wouldn't have to cry any longer than necessary. His eyelids drooped even lower, despite his best efforts to keep them open. He felt himself being gently turned and laid on his back. He finally took a good look at the Hyuga man that moved him. He looked like a stern and stoic man. However, at this time, he could see clear concern in the man's pale eyes with the veins bulging around them. He also could hear the man's quickened breathing, apparently trying to work on his grievous injury. He also glimpsed the tear-streaked face of the cute Hyuga girl he just saved standing behind the man, apparently freed from her bindings now. "Please, you need to stay alive!" The pale-eyed girl cried out in anguish as her entire body trembled at the sight of so much blood gushing from the young blonde boy's chest. That was when it struck Naruto, as his breathing became shallow and his throat began to flood with blood, making each labored breath that escaped sound like a wet gurgle. His wound was definitely fatal. There was no coming back from this one, he was sure. He didn't even feel anything as he watched the man quickly pull the kunai out with a wet snick, ripped his shirt off, and wadded it up to apply pressure to the gushing wound. The man then shouted something unintelligible at some far-off location, apparently addressing other people that must have arrived recently. Naruto's last sight was the heart-wrenching vision of the indigo-haired girl's tear-streaked and grief-stricken face, still desperately imploring for him to stay alive with her beautiful lavender-tinted eyes. His last thought came before total blackness took him. Damn it, I'm not coming back from this one, and this time I don't want to go. Talk about irony. I wanted to be able to grow up and protect my friends, but I guess I won't be able to do that now. At least I saved that cute girl. That was better than most people could do. Hinata and Hayashi. Get any of our physicians here now, and make haste. I want this child kept alive. Hayashi shouted at the group of Hyugas gathering nearby as he kept the pressure on this child's gaping wound, with no trace of his usual composure present. Some of them obeyed and left in search of an available medic inside the compound. The others were reluctant. Hayashi-sama, we shouldn't treat him. Don't you know who he is? We can finally get rid of this brat, this Dadash. An older Hyuga man was cut off as he choked under Hayashi's impressive killing intent directed toward him. Finish that word and I will gladly have Hokage-sama execute you for breaking the law. This brat saved my daughter from being kidnapped, and most likely a fate worse than death at the risk of his life. I owe it to him to keep him alive. Enough of your bullshit and begone with your ineptitude. He roared at the trembling Hyugas, his Byakugan blaring with promise of a painful fate for anyone who dared to object further. Only his younger identical twin brother opted to step up to the boy's body in an effort to help him out. Brother, his blood flow is slowing down too quickly and his chakra network is fading. What can we do now? Hizashi spoke softly as he kneeled down and checked the boy over with his Byakugan. Hayashi could only respond with a frustrated growl as he desperately tried to keep the boy alive even a second longer by increasing pressure on the wound. Hinata barely noticed her frantic father and uncle next to her as she continued to stare down at the blonde boy's still and paling form. She was completely numb inside as her tears stopped. She couldn't understand why this had to happen to someone as kind and brave as him. If she hadn't been so weak, this boy then wouldn't have had to sacrifice himself to save her worthless self. She stared down at her trembling hands. It felt like she had the boy's blood on them, even though they were perfectly clean. Before she could spiral lower into total despair, she heard an unnatural yelp of surprise each from her father and uncle. Before she could glance up to see what happened, she was yanked backward by her nightgown's collar, her father's blood-soaked hand clenching tightly onto it. Landing some distance away from the boy's body, all three were shocked to see bright red chakra burst from the body and surround it as if it was protecting the boy. Hayashi and Hizashi had to deactivate their Byakugan lest they became blinded by the dense and pure chakra radiating from the boy. They also had to resist the familiar and overpowering presence in the atmosphere as the other Hyugas scrambled to get away from the body as quickly as possible. The clan had heard his daughter cry out in shock. Father, what is this? Is it hurting him? Hinata exclaimed with none of her usual stutter, pulling hard at her father's death grip on her collar in an instinctive effort to protect her savior from whatever it was. Her father shushed harshly to get her to calm down a bit, and took a moment to stare at what was happening before them. He shared an astonished expression with Hizashi before replying. No, it seems to be healing the wound as if it was nothing. He murmured in amazement as he observed the young child's gaping wound beginning to close. Inside Naruto's mindscape, Naruto opened his eyes to find himself lying on his back, submerged up to his ears in shallow water. He quickly sat up in confusion and clutched at his chest, only to see no sign of the wound he supposedly suffered, and his shirt somehow remained intact. He knew that was real, so why did he end up here suddenly unhurt? He had a look around and saw that he was in a long, wide, and dimly lit hallway that seemed to stretch on forever into pitch-black darkness in either direction. The walls were old and crackling with large dark red and blue pipes snaking along them in odd patterns. He noted the red pipes were glowing bright red compared to the blue ones. What is this? Is this where people go when they die? Confused, he forced himself to rise and shake some of the excess water off. As he glanced at both directions the large hallway stretched into, he could feel something tugging at him a little one way. Having nothing else to go on, he decided to follow this sensation. After what seemed like hours of wading through the shallow water, the hallway suddenly opened up into an enormous room. Red and blue pipes covered nearly every inch of the walls on both sides and even the ceiling, but that wasn't what caught Naruto's attention, as he could now feel a very powerful presence in here. Walking further into the room revealed a giant set of iron bars blocking further progress into the darkness beyond. A closer inspection revealed a paper with seal written on it stuck high up on the center bar. He felt anxiety flowing through every single inch of his body. Something told him this was neither heaven nor hell. "You catch on quick, boy." A loud and authoritative voice boomed through the large cavern-like room. The young blonde yelped in surprise and fell back to land unceremoniously on his backside, splashing the shallow water everywhere. There was silence for a long moment before the booming voice broke into a mirthful chuckle, seemingly shaking the entire room with each exhalation. "Haha, it has been a while since I've had a good laugh. Please do not be frightened. We are in your mindscape and I wish to have a discussion with you, Uzumaki Naruto." The voice continued, rolling throughout the room like thunder. It took a moment for Naruto to regain his composure at hearing and feeling the presence beyond the iron bars. "Okay, but may I ask for your name since you apparently know mine?" The young boy carefully inquired upon the mysterious presence. He heard what sounded like a pleased growl. "Respectful, I like that. I will tell you my true name soon, but for now, I'm afraid you know me by another." The darkness began to fade out and Naruto could easily make out a massive silhouette shaped like an animal towering high over him. He also noted, with some trepidation, many long tails swaying gently behind it. Two enormous crimson eyes shone brightly down at him in the darkness near the top of the silhouette. "The humans out there call me Kyubi no Kitsune. The same nine-tailed demon fox that the fourth Hokage supposedly killed, with one exception." The darkness finally faded away completely, revealing an enormous crimson demonic-looking fox with rabbit-like ears and 9 tails. It was calmly lying on the floor and facing the boy directly with its arms crossed underneath its raised head. Its eyes were still staring down at him unblinkingly. "Instead, I was actually sealed within you when you were a newborn. I am the reason why you are hated by most of the ignorant idiots you've met so far in this ungrateful village." The now revealed Kyubi finished softly as its 9 tails twitched and swayed around absent-mindedly. It was watching the boy intensely for any reaction. It took all Naruto had to keep from crapping his pants at the prospect of being face-to-face with the giant demon fox that the entire village feared and hated. Only reassured somewhat by the presence of the iron bars between the two, he regained his composure finally. As he gazed up at the fox, whom seemed to be waiting for what he would say, he had to take a moment and think about what to say to this powerful entity apparently trapped within him. He finally understood why the villagers hated him so much, and, at first, he impulsively wanted to yell insults at the fox sitting beyond the bars for being the reason he lived a painful existence until recently. But would that have changed anything? Whatever put the fox into him already happened, and he already lived through the worst of the villagers' anger and hatred. Plus, those same villagers were morons for even believing him to be the demon fox itself in the first place, so he had no reason to care about what they thought of him now or in the future. He could tell things would continue to improve for him as he made more friends at this rate. And what if it wasn't the fox's fault it had to be sealed into him? He already learned of one lie when all of his generation and younger were told the Kyubi was actually killed. Right now, to him, it might not be such a bad thing having a giant entity sealed inside him. He probably got some benefits from that, right? And maybe he could make another friend in the process. At that thought, the Kyubi's eyes widened fractionally for an instant. After taking a long moment to quell the shock of this revelation, Naruto decided there was nothing that could be done to change anything right now. He decided to ask some questions before forming an opinion about his recently discovered tenant. "Thank you for not calling me a prisoner, and yes, you did get some benefits from having a giant entity sealed inside of you." The Kyubi suddenly spoke, as if the boy's thoughts were said out loud. Naruto flinched in surprise at that, then remembered that he was in what the fox called his mindscape. "It makes sense in this case. From those red pipes I see coming out from your side, you're kinda paying rent with some of your chakra, even if it was forced," the blonde replied sheepishly, pointing at the pipes lining the walls. The fox only gave a small grin, liking this human. He had a sharp mind, being able to understand instantly what the pipes symbolized. "So what happened that had me end up in here with you? The last thing I remember before coming here was a creepy man in black killing me for saving a girl. I certainly had no idea you've been in me all this time till now," Naruto asked, looking up at the giant fox with a cocked head. "When you were dying, I pumped some of my chakra throughout your system and it increased your healing rate exponentially. While I'm working on that, I decided to pull you into this room so we can finally meet face to face and have a discussion. It spoke with an annoyed tone on the last word, as if it was going to confront the boy about something. Naruto gulped, having a feeling he knew what the Kyuubi was pissed about. As if to signify the changing mood, the fox's massive tails began to move around a little forcefully, splashing the shallow water everywhere. Now, I would like to tell you about my end in regards to how this seal works between us. As long as I am inside you, my chakra is absorbed little by little into your body and I cannot break out of the seal at any time without killing you. The fox explained while pointing at the paper seal on the bar with one of its tails. While I'd admit I'm not too put out by that notion, I realized it's best for me to work with you and keep you alive until the end of your life this time. The reason for this is the seal connecting us both is designed so that if you died for any reason aside from old age, I'd die as well and it probably would be long and painful, too. Naruto winced. The fox became more agitated as it narrowed its sinister crimson eyes at the cringing blonde, bared all of its teeth, got up on all four legs with thunderous footsteps, and its tails thrashed loudly behind it. They were raising a deafening racket in this large room. So imagine my rage when I watched you try to kill yourself 4 times in quick succession some time ago, and I desperately worked my ass off to keep the both of us alive. Every god damn time, the all-powerful Kyuubi roared as it punctuated the last 5 words with an intense slam of one of its powerful tails onto the floor, shaking the entire room each time, and causing large waves everywhere with the shallow water. The fox's angry roar knocked the boy off his feet and blew him back several meters to tumble through the choppy water. After the outburst, the fox exhaled loudly and seemed to calm down as it returned to lying down. Naruto, while a little wary this time, slowly stood up from the calming water and shook the excess off to face his tenant again while remaining silent with a guilty expression. The Kyuubi sighed slowly and a small smirk tugged at its black lips. You're lucky that I healed you on a whim this time. After what happened, I decided I wouldn't heal your moronic ass ever again as long as you kept contemplating suicide. That'd mean I'm trapped inside a weak container and I'd rather just die with you and deal with the hassle of coming back to life a few decades later. I almost considered not saving you this time since going up against an experienced shinobi the way you are now would be considered a form of suicide by many people, myself included. The Kyuubi grinned at Naruto's annoyed scowl at being called suicidal for doing what he thought was right. Still, you did do it to rescue that human child and you actually did not want to die, so I decided to interfere and make a deal with you. I want to help you get strong enough to keep the both of us alive, as well as protect all of your friends, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto became alarmed about the notion of making a deal with a demon, especially when it was the most powerful being in existence. He decided to make sense of something before he would decide to accept or not. Go ahead and ask your questions. The Kyuubi snickered at seeing the boy face fault at having his mind read again. Damn it! Anyway, I only have one question. Why did you attack Konoha? He asked firmly, before gulping a little as he saw the giant fox narrow its eyes angrily. Its tails shifted some as it took a deep and calming breath. Apparently it was a sore subject. A masked man with the Sharingan ripped me out of my previous container and put me under his control with that accursed Kekkai Genkai. I was then taken to your village and forced to rampage through it until your 4th Hokage came and sealed me into you, and that's how we got here. I should warn you that man apparently needed my power for something far beyond simply rampaging through some human village, at least before he was stopped and released his control over me just before I was resealed. He would likely return in the future to try and rip me out of you, and I don't need to tell you that, with this seal, would result in certain death for us, boy. The Kyuubi spoke with an angry undertone. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the prospect of being hunted in the future for what he contained. He decided to move on and worry about that later. That's all I need to know for now. I'm going to be fine with being your partner on this then. The Kyuubi was surprised at this boy's carefree attitude about making a deal with the demon, even though it wasn't really one, at least in the strictest sense of the term, in the first place. Aren't you going to ask what the terms were on this deal, at least? Fine, I'll listen to the terms. As long as none of them has you stepping out of me and going nuts on this village, they should be reasonable enough. Naruto replied as if he was wondering why they were wasting time on this. The Kyuubi rolled its eyes. I'll tell you anyway so you won't bitch at me in the future about anything that comes up. Now your benefits in this partnership are that you receive all of my help in making you much more stronger like a container of the Kyuubi no Kitsune should be. That includes, but is not limited to, physical training, learning to control your chakra efficiently, receiving my fire affinity and several of my own personal fire jutsu, my knowledge of tactics and strategies, genjutsu, taijutsu, kenjutsu, and the ability to control your own tailed beast transformation after you've trained long enough. I will also help you with most of the genjutsu cast upon you by dispelling them with my own churka. If you begin now and work hard, you should be strong enough to get on even ground with the strongest people I've seen by the time you reach the age of 18. The QB had to hold back a smirk at seeing the boy's expression of wonder and amazement. I have 4 terms of my own in this partnership. First, you unlock all of your senses to me so I can see, hear, smell, taste, and feel whatever you come across in the outside world since it gets boring in here. A simple agreement between us is all the intent it should take for the seal to allow me to actively link up with you. Up until now, I could only find out things about you by reading your memories. We'd also now be able to speak to each other without you having to come here every time, and you also benefit by having your senses heightened even further thanks to my own senses merging with yours. Either of us can still cut the link for some privacy if needed. Why should I care about my privacy if I'm going to trust you? Believe me, when you get older, you'll want all the privacy you can get. The fox retorted with a snicker. The blonde just cocked his head in confusion, but shrugged. Sure. Let's agree to that. It sounds like a great help for us both. The QB grinned. So be it. We should be able to link up now. Indeed, they both felt something shift slightly in the air around them, as if some unknown force just responded to their conversation nonverbally just now. Next term, I would like for you to fix this mindscape so it isn't such a shithole to live in. It only takes a little bit of concentration to be able to change anything in this place with your mind, so I'll help you with that when we have time. This will help improve your training exponentially when you come in here to train your mind and chakra while your body rests at night. Naruto immediately responded with a sharp nod, having no objection to that. Third term, this one you may have difficulty accepting, but you must do this. It's for both our sake, or the deal's off, is that understood? The fox spoke with a serious gaze, and Naruto gulped. The fox's expression suddenly switched from serious to clear amusement as it held 2 fingers up. You must limit your ramen intake to only 2 times a week. It said in a sing-song voice that did not match the rows of sharp teeth as it smiled, baring them all. Naruto's face faltered, clearly tricked by the serious atmosphere just a moment ago. The fox was enjoying the look of utter horror creeping up on its container's face at the prospect of actually having to eat his beloved ramen like a normal person should. What the hell was with that sudden change, Fox? And why the hell do I have to cut down on the food of the gods? The fox once again bared its sharp teeth in a wide grin that looked purely demonic, and the boy involuntarily gulped. I may be viewed as a demon, but I am also based on a fox. It's my nature to enjoy jokes and tricks. You will provide plenty of entertainment, by the way. The QB had to chuckle at Naruto's indignant, before continuing. You should be glad I'm actually allowing you to eat any. This so-called food of the gods you love and trust so much is the primary reason you're a shrimp for your age. The fox spoke bluntly, holding its right hand up to show its pointer and thumb with very little space between them, as if to denote smallness. Naruto got a tick mark on his temple at the sight. I can help you craft a strong body from here in combination with your extreme physical training, but I can only do so much without proper nutrition. It was a good thing you still occasionally visit your friends for dinner lately aside from your 5 meals of ramen every day, otherwise you'd have been a malnourished prawn at this point. The fox finished with its pointer and thumb growing even closer together to punctuate the malnourished prawn insult. Naruto developed another tick mark, and had to take a minute to calm down. Grr, damn it. I'll do it. I'll give up on that stuff if that's what it'll take for me to get strong enough to protect my friends. The blonde declared more for himself than for the fox in front of him, as if to steel his nerves in face of that horrible reality. Very good. Before we move on, I forgot to mention that I'm female, and you may call me by my given name, which is Kurama. I just wanted to clear that up since I'm getting tired of you referring to me as it. The fox now named Kurama dropped this bombshell as casually as if she was talking about the weather. What? Was Naruto's intelligent reply as he stared up at her in shock. The great fox seemed to take offense to this. Is there a problem with the most powerful entity in the world being a female nature? Kurama slowly ground out as the temperature in the room seemed to drop a few degrees. Naruto straightened up, sweat pouring buckets down his face. And then no, ma'am. It's just that, you have such a wonderfully deep voice, so that's why I was confused. The fox rolled her eyes with a sigh at the failed flattery. It's just the way I am. Do you expect a smaller version of me to pop out from some hidden curtain and say pay no attention to the tiny fox behind the curtain, with a squeaky voice? She muttered in a sarcastic tone, then sighed again at the boy's totally lost expression. She waved her hand dismissively. Never mind, it was just an old expression I picked up many thousands of years ago. Moving on, Naruto, this is the last term of our partnership. When I think you're powerful enough and ready, I want you to go hunt down and kill the man who took control of me and made me attack your village. I doubt you have any issue with that considering he's responsible for everything that's happened to you since then. If you succeed in that, I promise I will be content living out the remainder of your lifespan within you, and I will swear not to have anything to do with Konoha and its allies when I get out. I just don't want to be sealed into another person. Kurama finished dictating her terms and awaited the boy's reply. Before that, there's something I need to say to you. Naruto finally spoke with a serious expression after thinking a long moment. The fox was wondering what he meant when her eyes widened at what she saw. The boy was now on his knees and hands, dunking his forehead into the water to touch the floor in a classic submission posture. Kurama, I am truly sorry for that time when I tried to take my own life. While I did not know you were sealed inside me at that time, it did not excuse the fact that I could have killed you as well. It was never my desire to drag anyone else into that. Also, I want to thank you too. You saved me. Because of that, I've been able to fix myself up enough to move on and work for a better life now. Naruto spoke in his most sincere tone possible. Kurama was so stunned by this display that she didn't say anything for a minute. She finally found her voice and growled with an annoyed expression. Get up from that pose and don't ever do it again. You are my container and partner, and you will not bow down that low in submission to anyone, not even to me. Is that understood? She growled out. However, her face settled into a more gentle expression as the boy picked himself off the ground. But, you're welcome and apology accepted. The blonde boy gave her a million-watt smile as he walked up close to the bars and stuck out his right hand out between them. Deal accepted. I expect you to work me hard, Kurama-sensei. And I expect you to do me proud as my container, Uzumaki Naruto. Kurama replied as she stuck one of her giant claws out to let the boy grip it on the very tip, and they shook a little. After releasing and letting the comfortable silence settle in the air for a moment, the boy decided to say something that was on his mind. Did you do something with my memories back then? Apparently I was supposed to have these fake memories put into me so I would forget about what happened, but I knew right away and I still remembered everything anyway. The giant fox put a finger to her muzzle as she thought for a moment. I'm not quite sure about that. It may have been something to do with my chakra interfering with the effects of whatever that man with the long ponytail did to your mind. If that's the case, then, with my help, you could be immune to mental probing and torture. Another useful trait of our partnership, it seems. That got her a foxy grin from the boy. She then perked her head up and seemed to glance at something that Naruto clearly wasn't seeing. Now, I sense something is going on outside, so you should be waking up soon. I'm done healing your wound and only a few minutes have passed out there. Be careful, as you'll be weakened for a while. We will speak more about this arrangement later when you're rested up, Naruto. See you later. See you then. The blonde container replied as his waving form began to fade out. Looking at the spot where he disappeared, Kurama had to let a toothy smile grow on her face. So that was your son, Kushina. He'll surprise me many times, I'm sure. Outside with the twins and Hinata a few minutes earlier, Hayashi, Hizashi, and Hinata found themselves the only ones standing close to Naruto's body that was currently glowing, tinting the surrounding night air in crimson color. The others already ran away in terror, screaming about a demon fox coming loose, their oh-so-important Hyuga pride and composure completely forgotten. The three Hyugas stayed rooted in place, staring transfixed at the beautiful but apparently deadly red chakra slowly whirling around the boy's body in a protective manner. Father, uncle, what is that? Hayashi noticed his daughter asked that with no fear in her voice. Only open curiosity. He also noted his brother stiffening uncomfortably. I am afraid I cannot tell you that, my daughter. It is a secret only this child can tell you himself. I recommend waiting on inquiring about this until you feel you have gained this boy's trust. That is if you wish to pursue a friendship with him. Hayashi replied softly as he still kept a firm hold on her shoulder, making sure she didn't get close to the body just yet. Now then, we must prepare to greet Hokage-sama. The clan head spoke as he and Hizashi turned around and Hinata reluctantly followed suit, a little confused. Her unasked question was answered immediately when the sight of the Hokage and 6 of his ANBU escorts jumping down onto the walkway from the air greeted them. The third's face was grim as he surveyed the scene, from the broken body of the black-clad shinobi, to the 3 Hyugas, and finally to the crimson glowing body of the Kyuubi jinchuriki. What happened here? He asked calmly, but his tone did not hide his tension at seeing the Kyuubi's chakra floating around the boy's body. A few minutes of explanations brought everyone up to speed. They were also dismayed to discover the kidnapper, when one of the ANBU investigated his body, turned out to be the diplomat sent from Kumo. The Hokage rubbed his temples at the upcoming headache, as he'd have to deal with an international incident when word of this eventually reached Kumogakure. In the meantime, 3 of the ANBU were now standing guard in a triangle formation around Naruto as the crimson chakra continued to twirl around him. After a few minutes of anxious waiting, everyone noticed the red glow was beginning to fade away, and the chakra eventually shrank until it finally retreated fully into the boy's body. The Hokage and everyone else held their breaths for what seemed like eternity until they saw the boy stirring awake. The old man stepped closer until he was just out of the boy's range, with his escorts tensing into readiness. "Naruto-kun, is that you? Are you okay?" Groaning, Naruto opened his eyes to see the very concerned face of his surrogate grandfather. "Hokage-jiji, what are you doing here?" he murmured tiredly. The third let out an explosive breath of relief as he discreetly signaled his ANBU to stand down. Only Naruto would call him that, and this was definitely the same boy he came to know and care for. He'd have to put off his discussion about the red chakra, at least until he was able to get alone with the boy soon. He noted the young Hyuga girl bravely stepping up. "Ano, what's why your name?" Hinata asked with barely any stuttering, surprising the twin brothers a little. I am Uzumaki Naruto. It's nice to meet you," the boy replied with a tired and sheepish smile as he sat up. "Well, Naruto Keikun, my name is Hyuga Hinata and I want to thank you for rescuing me once again. I'm glad you do not seem to be hurt anymore now," Hinata quietly stated before she quickly reached in for a hug. It was all Naruto could do to not jump in surprise at being suddenly hugged by someone other than Ino and her mother. After getting used to it, he thought it felt very nice and warm. Hinata, on the other hand, was blushing scarlet at such an impulsive action. Both hid their slight disappointment upon letting go of each other. "I would like to see you again soon when you recover, if that is permissible with my father," Hinata shyly stated as she glanced at her father. Hayashi nodded slightly in approval before turning to his twin brother. "Hizashi, please return to the compound and inform them that all is well. Take my daughter with you as well, and guard her and Hanabi until I return," Hayashi requested of his younger brother. He got an affirmative nod in return and turned back to Hinata. "My daughter, you should get back to check on your sister and Tomo-san. I am sure they are worried about you. Afterward, get cleaned up and await my return before you retire to bed. I will remain here for a moment longer," Hayashi commanded of the little Hyuga, who quickly bowed her head to everyone and made her way back into the compound with her uncle. Hayashi then kneeled down next to the tired boy. "Uzumaki-san, my name is Hyuga Hayashi and I am the head of my clan. I wish to express my heartfelt gratitude to you for saving Hinata. You are welcome to come by the compound any time my daughter wishes to meet with you. I also have to admit it was very clever of you on how you alerted us to the kidnapping," Hayashi remarked with a slight twinkle in his eyes. Naruto had the decency to look sheepish. "It was all I could think of. I've seen how protective parents are of their children, especially a father and his daughter. I had to get help as fast as possible, sir." Hayashi nodded with a small but amused smirk before continuing. "In addition, if you desire help with any situation, please come to me soon and we will discuss it. I will do my best to provide you with solutions." The Hyuga had spoken in his most sincere tone and bowed his head slightly. Naruto was caught unsure on what to do with this unexpected display from one of the most powerful and influential noblemen in the village. He almost flinched when Kurama's voice spoke quietly into his head. "Naruto. It's me, Kurama. Do not speak, only think your responses when you're talking to me, okay? Respond to him with respect. Make sure to use the proper suffix and be modest. We're going to need his support in the future if we want our lives to be a bit easier, and it's important we secure it now." "Gotcha." Naruto thought quickly, and took a moment as he considered his response. "Hayashi-sama, thank you for your generous offer. I just did what I had to do when I came across that guy, even if it hadn't been your daughter in his clutches. Anyone else would have done the same, I'm sure." "Excellent response, Naruto. Nonsense, Uzumaki-san. You were there and that is all that matters now. My offer will always be available indefinitely. I shall be seeing you soon. Hayashi smoothly replied with some admiration for Naruto's humbleness. He then stood up before inclining his head slightly. Have a good night and get some rest, Uzumaki-san, he added before moving over to the Hokage for a few words. Looks like we won his support. Don't do anything to screw that up. Besides, that female child will likely grow up to be a good mate to you in the future. Kurama murmured offhandedly. What's a mate? Naruto swore he heard the giant fox face fault in his head. Don't mind that for now, and I'll explain in the future. I keep forgetting you're just a young human child. Naruto thought about inquiring further about that term before he froze as he noticed someone's terrifying presence looming over him. He creaked his head robotically around and up to see his surrogate grandfather's peering face. The old man's gaze was deadly serious. The boy also noticed no one else were in sight around the two of them for some reason. Now, Naruto-kun, tell me what happened for you to have your apparently fatal wound miraculously healed by some crimson chakra. The third demanded in a tone that brooked no lie or half-truth. Naruto gulped loudly. What do I say, Kurama? Sorry kiddo, you're on your own with this one. That guy scares the shit out of me too. Good luck, the fox said quickly before signing off for the night. Don't leave me alone with the scary old man. Come back! Naruto screamed futilely in his head, before he slowly glanced up to the third again with growing dread. Well then, please speak, Naruto-kun. The third leaned in over him with a closed-eyes grin. However, behind the grin was a promise that unspeakable horrors would be brought down on Naruto if he did not satisfy the god of shinobi with his explanation. The blonde hero gulped loudly. Chapter 3: Defying Fate PT-1. Hokage's office. Next morning, two people now currently occupied the office of Konohagakure's village leader at this time, the young blonde-haired and whiskered boy Uzumaki Naruto, and Sarutobi Hiruzen, the third Hokage himself. The boy was sitting in a chair in front of the Hokage's giant wooden desk, looking exhausted and about to nod off to sleep, having been kept from his precious bed all night due to Hiruzen's incessant questions. The old man himself was sitting behind his desk, his elbows resting on it as he rubbed his temples and kept his eyes trained on his surrogate grandson. It was silent between the two for 10 long minutes aside from Naruto's occasional half-snore/half-snort as he briefly dozed off before jerking awake repeatedly. The young boy was growing frustrated as the silence went on. Damn it, old man! I told you everything, down to every single thing I remember ever since I was born. That proves I'm really Naruto. Please let me go home and sleep, or at least kill me now. I don't care either way, I'm about to drop dead from exhaustion. Naruto yelled, having had enough of the silence and the Hokage's studying eyes. The old man sighed with closed eyes for a moment, and leveled his gaze again at the young boy. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. I just have to be absolutely sure you weren't being taken over by the Kyuubi. Even though you believe what the fox gets pretty touchy about that. Naruto corrected with a foxy smirk. Kurama growled from inside his head. You finally showed up, huh? Thanks a lot for bailing out on me, damn fox. He thought, then grinned mentally at his tenant's grumbling. She told you about her being controlled, we have to be wary. She is still a clever and powerful entity after all. Though I admit I am intrigued about how you would turn out if we allow her to supervise your training from now on. The Hokage admitted with a sigh. He thought about the alternative of doing the child's training with some of his top shinobi, but there were always time constraints. Those same people were also quite busy with a backlog of missions due to the lingering effects of the military force being reduced significantly by the Kyuubi disaster. Unfortunately, against his personal judgment, the third had to realize letting the Kyuubi help was going to be the best option for the young blonde in the long run. After another long moment of consideration, the older man stood up to retrieve a fresh scroll and began writing when he returned to his desk. Okay, I'll allow this. Naruto's excited shout of Yada was immediately followed by the old man raising an index finger with a firm gaze. But you must keep this secret. Most people in this village will not take kindly to the thought of you being raised by the Kyuubi, and they will likely take it upon themselves to get rid of you if this gets out. You may confide in people you truly trust, but I'd still be very selective about that too if I were you, he warned as he continued to scribble in the scroll. For now, you should work on your physical conditioning and learn to open up your chakra network for molding until you begin your academy career. When your first term ends for the summer, you will be escorted by some of my most trusted people, depending on who volunteers, to a secret training field with a shack far outside of the village during the 3-month break. This will repeat every academy year until graduation, so you will be able to safely practice using the Kyuubi's chakra among many other things. He dictated before his expression turned deadly serious. Any other time until I personally change this, you are not allowed to draw on any of the Kyuubi's chakra anywhere near or within the village's premises unless you have my express permission. Is that understood? He narrowed his eyes at the boy. Naruto locked his gaze with the older man just as seriously, and nodded once without hesitation. The third nodded back, his visage relaxing. What are you going to do about the academy, Naruto-kun? I was planning to get you admitted early this year. You should put off going to the academy for this year at least. You need a lot of physical and chakra training to be able to use my chakra without hurting yourself initially. At this rate, it will take about 1.5 years before I think you would be ready, which is right when the first 3-month break next year should occur. Kurama suggested. I think I'll wait on that for now if that's okay with you, Hokage Gigi. I'll join whenever my friends enroll, and they said they're waiting till next year. Naruto replied after a moment's thought. The old man nodded with an understanding smile. Let me add that, for now, I would be happy to help provide you with training aids, some low-level jutsu scrolls, and some weapons should you need them in the future. Just come to me and we'll discuss any of that, okay? He got a happy nod before continuing. For now you will be allowed access to Training Ground 42 since no one is using that. However, you will need a special permit since you are not a shinobi yet. The Hokage finished writing in the scroll and called for an ANBU to appear. Take this to Commander Dragon, please. The third commanded, and the masked nin saluted as he took the scroll and disappeared in a swirl of smoke. I need to learn that. The boy bounced excitedly in his chair while the Hokage chuckled. Naruto, asked the old fart if that training field will have some steep cliffs for climbing. Kurama suddenly spoke, and Naruto reluctantly relayed what the fox asked, having a bad feeling about this. Despite his misgivings, Hiruzen had to smile. That fox knew what she was doing, after all. Yes, there is a large and deep ravine that should suit what you are looking for, Kyuubi-san. I will be sure to include a little something with the training aids when you are ready to have Naruto-kun start on that. The Hokage replied for the fox's benefit. Naruto was confused, and somewhat scared as he saw his surrogate grandfather's knowing smile, and he could feel the fox inside him grin wide in response. The third cleared his voice. I apologize for keeping you here this long, Naruto-kun. I will let you get on your way now, since I have things to take care of in regard to the kidnapping attempt last night. You also need to recover your health, so come back in 3 days for your permit. Have a good day. He stated with a polite dismissal. The blond boy just nodded with a grin and quickly ran out of the room with a wave. The god of shinobi sighed tiredly as he turned in his chair to look out over his village through the large window behind the desk. He knew the entire village would be buzzing loudly when the news of the Hyuga kidnapping attempt reached everyone. What are you going to do now, Yae-san? Naruto, what do I do? Naruto thought as he sped through the streets toward his apartment, a little embarrassed with getting stares from the villagers this time. He was still topless after he lost his shirt last night, after all. As the old fart said, you need rest. Just get something to eat that's not ramen and get to sleep all day and night. We will get started on organizing your training tomorrow morning. Kurama spoke thoughtfully. Naruto was a little crestfallen since he wanted to get started right away and he wasn't actually feeling tired, but he'd trust her. He stopped by a market that was forced to treat him as a normal customer thanks to the Hokage's interference, and bought 2 disposable bowls of cereal and milk. Arriving home, he quickly ate then dived onto his bed, already asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow. He hadn't realized just how close to extreme exhaustion he was. Kumogakure, Reikich's office. The very large, dark-skinned, and muscular fourth Reikich grunted as he lifted a dumbbell weighing 500 pounds, while sitting in his desk chair. This powerful shinobi named Ei was deep in thought as he wondered how the Hyuga kidnapping he ordered went. Gaining more Kekkai Genkai users was his father's last order before appointing him the new Reikich. Then that tough old bastard went and got himself killed defending Kumo's retreat against 10,000 IWA troops after that damn village decided to disband their alliance at the end of the Third Great Shinobi War. Ei did not have his now-deceased father's obsession with getting more Kekkai Genkai users to increase Kumo's might, but he had to admit he was curious about what adding the abilities of the famed Byakugan could do for his military. Kumo was not well known for its sensing and tracking capabilities. Hell, I only found just one amazing sensor in Shia from the latest crop of shinobi coming out since the last Great War. When this peace treaty negotiation came up, the Reikage decided to take a chance and made the order to sneak one of his retired jounin into Konoha as an ambassador. Now all he could do was to just wait for any news to come back to him. There was urgent knocking at the office's door. Yai carefully put the dumbbell down onto the floor, which creaked loudly under the weight, since he didn't want to get berated by his lovely new secretary for destroying his office again. After a loud grunt of enter, a chunin in charge of the messenger hawks burst in, breathing hard with a scroll in hand. Reikage-sama, there's bad news from Konoha. What? The Reikage growled as he rose to his feet and moved to the chunin. Snatching the offered scroll and opening it quickly, he began reading. His mood began to darken with each line he read and, upon reaching the end, crushed the scroll in his closed and trembling fists. He then growled in rage as he slammed one of his massive fists into his desk. The strike easily obliterated it into splinters. The chunin stood stock still, as if making a single movement would alert the enraged Reikage to his presence. But Ei only took a deep breath while the dust from the desk cleared and took a moment to think. He wasn't going to give up on this. Fortunately, the treaty that Kumo and Konoha signed was real and binding despite the true nature of the ambassador being revealed. He'd make use of that if he could find a way. Chunin! Send a message to our spies in Konoha. Have them find a copy of the report on exactly what happened with our guy. I need all the details, including any witness background details. Fastest speed! He barked in a tone that brooked no hesitating. The messenger chunin quickly nodded and sprinted out of the office like a bat out of hell. Early next morning, same location, the Reikage entered the office after finishing his usual early morning workout regime. He sighed in disgust as he remembered how he had to deal with the council yesterday, and spent all day assuring those lazy bastards that he would find a way to get something out of this fiasco. He was so close to using his lariat on all of them and then adopt Konoha's style of military dictatorship. The council's pressure was part of the reason why he pulled the trigger on this kidnapping attempt. Now he was already realizing his father might have happily dumped the Reikage title on him and rushed to death just to avoid dealing with the council ever. And all the damn paperwork. He sat behind his new desk to absent-mindedly lift some dumbbells and shake out evil thoughts about decapitating pompous asses. After about 30 minutes, there was a knock at the door. Another loud enter revealed the same messenger chunin. Reikage-sama, we got the information from our spies in Konoha. These were sealed into the Hawk's message scroll. The man spoke quickly as he presented just 2 scrolls. Yai raised an eyebrow. Did they not have time to gather more files on other witnesses? No, sir. There was only one legitimate witness at the time of our ambassador's death. There were 2 others present, but they were the clan head and his daughter, so their accounts could be dismissed as biased in any court. The Reikage's other eyebrow joined the first one at this interesting development. He took the 2 scrolls, then sent the chunin out. He laid them out on his desk and took his time reading over the detailed account of exactly how it happened, and then looked over the witness file. Ei's eyes widened at the interesting history of this person. His lips began to form a smirk as he reread the Konoha ANBU's report, and his many years of shinobi experience told him that it seemed to have left important parts out in some areas. Apparently there were some secrets involved with this incident that they could not carelessly put on an official report for even their own shinobi with high enough clearance to read over. No matter, it would be their downfall. Without the whole truth, this report suddenly had holes. It was a long shot, but Ei would take this as he buzzed his secretary into the office via the intercom. Mabui-san, get me the diplomat that worked with Konoha in the past, and clear my schedule for this morning. I have a long list of things to discuss with him. The Reikage ordered. The now named beautiful dark-skinned young woman affirmed with a silent nod and moved to make arrangements. Ei then leaned back into his chair and sighed. This is truly an underhanded tactic. I almost actually feel bad about this. Almost. But I need to succeed in this to make the inevitable international shitstorm from the attempted abduction worth it. He began to grin. If this works, we may actually get an intact body of the strongest and most pure male Hyuga. That would provide solid results in our research compared to a female Hyuga who was viewed as weak by her own clan. Especially if we manage to extract some semen before it could decay. Same time in Konohagakure. I can't believe I slept that much. You're right about me needing it, Kurama. Naruto muttered out loud as he yawned and stretched his body as much as he could in his bed on this early morning. He slept most of the day away yesterday, only getting up to eat and relieve himself. I am always right. I do have one question, though. Just what is that abomination you have on your head? Kurama remarked in his head, curious about the interesting-looking nightcap her host was wearing. It looked like an odd toothy monster eating the boy's blonde hair. Don't diss Mr. Nightcap. It protects me from bad dreams and keeps my head warm. Besides, it's a gift from Hokage Gigi. He defended as he stepped out of the bed to stretch some more. Nevertheless, my container shouldn't be wearing something that stupid and childish, grumbled the fox. Naruto just shrugged as he pulled the nightcap off and began undressing for shower. You do realize I'm still a child, right? The boy deadpanned. So? Foxes are already adults by the time they're your age. Kurama tried pitifully. He just laughed out loud. Your fox logic won't work on a human, and the hat stays. He smirked upon hearing an annoyed snort in his head. After showering and eating an actual healthy breakfast of milk, fruit, toast, and oatmeal, Naruto dressed in his training outfit of a black loose sleeveless shirt with the Uzumaki spiral drawn in red on the back and white shorts. So what do I need to start with? The boy thought, getting down to business as he stretched to make his body loose. Unfortunately, your body is pitifully underdeveloped thanks, once again, to your hopefully former ramen addiction. Kurama paused for an angry snort from her container before continuing. Any real physical conditioning will just break your body at this point. We will build up your endurance and muscles as you eat healthier before we begin on any actual conditioning and your shinobi training. It won't take much time, as I will be working to make efficient use of your body's improved nutrition. It shouldn't more than 2 months for you to be in good enough shape. Until then, we'll start with something easy. Maybe 10 laps around the entire village, and 2 sets of 50 crunches, push-ups, and squats each 2 laps. The fox couldn't help but smirk evilly at the boy's horrified expression at the list of the easy exercises. We will flesh out more of your exercises from there as time goes on. Now get going and no talkback. Chop chop. The hidden A and B guarding Naruto eventually wrote in their daily report that they heard their charge loudly cursing a damn fox as the boy left his apartment for his long morning of exercises. Later it was noon when our blonde hero was dragging himself up the stairs to his apartment. Damn fox, you put me through hell today. Naruto whined as he painfully fished for his keys in his shorts pocket. I know. I particularly enjoyed your creative vocabulary on what you were going to do to me when I asked for 2 more laps. I'll be looking forward to more tomorrow. Kurama replied, snickering at the memory. Naruto let out a pained groan as he opened the door, shuffled in, and fell forward flat on the entrance hallway's floor. A moment later, the 2 A and B guards hidden next to the still open front door could hear snoring. 2 huge sweat drops formed in the air above where the 2 invisible guards were hiding. After listening to the boys snoring for 5 minutes, the guards shrugged at each other, and one of them briefly shimmered into visibility to gently close the front door. An hour later, the blonde woke up with his stomach grumbling. He opted to make use of the first of his 2 allowable ramen meal for the week. He cleaned himself up and headed back out, wincing in slight pain from his sore body. Arriving at Ichiraku Ramen, he was greeted by one of the few people that saw him for who he really was, Tucci, owner of his favorite ramen stand. Hey there! How's our hero doing? The middle-aged man called out boisterously from the kitchen as he saw the little blonde sit at the counter. Naruto glanced around to check he was actually the one being spoken to and cocked his head in confusion with a fox-like expression. Hero? Did I do something, old man? He innocently quizzed. Tucci laughed uproariously. You sure did. You're too modest, or have you forgotten how you saved that cute Hyuga heiress the other night? The whole village is abuzz about it, the cook clarified. Naruto smacked a fist into the other hand in realization. Oh, ooh. That one. Actually, I did forget about that. I was sleeping all day yesterday, and I was busy with my sensei from hell all morning. Naruto replied with an embarrassed chuckle while rubbing the back of his head. I heard that, scoffed the sensei from hell. A cute brown-haired young teenage girl came into view from the back of the stand. As soon as she saw the familiar mop of sun-kissed blonde hair, she let out a happy cry and jumped over the counter, with speed that would shock an elite jounin, to snatch the boy into a bone-crushing hug before he could say anything. You're a hero! You must have been so awesome when you stopped that evil Nin all by yourself and saved that Hyuga girl. Maybe she'll fall in love and you two will get married. The cute waitress rambled on as she squeezed her little brother figure harder. I am Chan, you're killing our favorite customer, you know. The amused Tucci pointed out to his daughter. Huh! was her reply before she looked down to see the poor boy's blue face suffocating between her already budding breasts. She yelped and pulled Naruto away from her chest before apologizing sheepishly. Naruto took in a breath and chuckled at Ayam, his sister figure, who also saw him for who he was instead of the Kyuubi. It was no big deal, Ayam-chan. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Naruto replied shyly with a hand on the back of his head before continuing. Why would anyone want to marry me though? I have the dash. He quickly clapped a hand over his mouth at the slip. Tucci and Ayam caught on and were stunned. Moron. Naruto's inner voice grumbled. You know now? The older cook leaned in to inquire carefully while Ayam looked on with a demure expression. Naruto sighed before nodding, and heavy silence fell on them for an uncomfortable moment before Tucci smiled broadly. Don't worry, what happened with the Hyuga clan is only the beginning. Some of the villagers are beginning to form new opinions of you, and it won't be long before everyone sees you for who you truly are. If you keep this up when you grow up, I wouldn't be surprised if you have many friends, and likely many girlfriends. The old man spoke the last part with a small perverted grin and laughed, before Ayam lightly conked him on the head with a ladle. Don't pay attention to him, even though it's true you'll be breaking many girls' hearts everywhere you go when you're older, Ayam slyly said with a teasing smirk. Naruto looked horrified. Why would I do that? It'll kill them if I break their hearts. His childish misunderstanding caused both Ikarakas to laugh uproariously, and it took them a while to settle down before asking an embarrassed blonde for his order. He felt better immediately when he was told it was on the house for his heroics. After eating 3 bowls, he wondered for a minute about what he was going to do today. Maybe I should stop by the Naras and see if Shika's home. Naruto thought before jumping off the stool and walked in the direction of the clan's district, saying his goodbyes to the ramen stand owners. A 30-minute walk found Naruto speaking with the lazy-looking guards in front of the Nara compound. However, he was dismayed to discover the head family had gone out of town for a few days into the clan's giant nature reservation to catalog the deer population for research, as well as gathering supplies for medicine and other things. The blonde let out a sigh and muttered troublesome before thanking them and leaving. The Naras thought about filing for copyright infringement upon hearing their signature phrase being uttered, but found it too troublesome. On the way, he passed by the Hyuga compound's main gate, and he was reminded that Hinata wanted to see him again soon. He shrugged on that thought and decided it couldn't hurt to see if she was available. Stopping in front of the gate's 2 guards, he made his request. My name's Uzumaki Naruto. I was asked by Hyuga Hinata to stop by when I recovered, and I was wondering if she was available. The 2 guards narrowed their eyes at the blonde boy and he had to hold back a gulp. Finally one of them spoke up. Uzumaki-sama, please remain here while my colleague steps inside to inquire about your request. The one on the left spoke professionally while the other slipped inside through the gate, apparently to speak to someone. A few minutes of terse silence passed between Naruto and the remaining guard until the front gate creaked open to reveal the other guard and one more man. Hyuga Hizashi stepped up to Naruto and bowed slightly. The surprised Naruto nervously returned the bow. Hello, Hayashi-sama. We met the other night. I apologize if my stopping by here unannounced took you out of your busy schedule, Naruto respectfully said, mistaking the man in front of him for his identical twin brother, the Hyuga clan head. Hizashi could not resist an amused smirk. My sincerest apologies, Uzumaki-sama. We have not officially met, and it was dark the other night, but please do forgive the confusion. I am not Hayashi-sama, but his twin brother, Hizashi. The man paused as the boy flinched in surprise and confusion. The boy allowed himself to have a closer look and he did notice that this man was wearing a hitate on his forehead compared to Hayashi being completely free of any headwear. I was asked to greet you and take you to our meeting hall since that is where my niece is being trained by her father. Hizashi continued as he bowed and stepped aside for Naruto to enter the compound. The blonde stayed where he was, a little nervous. Hizashi-sama, if they're busy, maybe I shouldn't bother them. The boy tried to respectfully back out. Nonsense, Uzumaki-sama. They are about to finish and Hinata-sama will have some free time afterward. In the meantime, I'd be happy to escort you until then, insisted Hizashi. Naruto reluctantly gave up and went inside with his escort. The sight Naruto saw as he entered through the gate flabbergasted him. He was immediately surrounded by a gorgeous garden on the sides and a long and thin reflecting pool forward of him. The pool was filled with beautiful and colorful koi fish, and vibrant green and white lily pads peppered the surface. The inner gardener in him squealed like a fangirl as he observed all kinds of rare plants and flowers in the garden surrounding the entrance. This was a clear display of the clan's wealth, and also their appreciation for the beauty of nature. As Naruto followed Hisashi around to the left side of the long reflecting pool, the garden opened up wide for him to see many impressive traditional Eastern-style houses littering the enormous compound. This was like a small village within Konoha. The long and narrow reflecting pool seemed to almost split the entire compound estate in two, with several ornate wooden bridges allowing access to either side. However, Naruto seemed to notice the odd discrepancies between the houses on the left side of the pool and the ones on the right. He also noticed that he was being taken to a giant traditional meeting hall at the other end of the pool, opposite the main gate. Hisashi-sama. He tried to speak before Hisashi politely interrupted him with a shake of his head. Uzumaki-sama, please do not refer to me with Sama. I am not the head of this clan. My brother is. He replied politely with a small smile. Okay. Hisashi-san then. I know I'm being rude asking this, but I noticed that there are a lot of small houses on this side of the pool while there are fewer on the other side, yet they're bigger and fancier. Is there a reason for that? Naruto inquired as he continued to see the differences. Hisashi smiled gently at the boy's observation. Usually a child like him would be staring into the pool the whole way, not even bothering to look around and notice the subtle darkness of this clan. Even the more mature and adult guests were only interested in the more luxurious offerings. Uzumaki-sama, since you may be coming here to visit more often, I am inclined to give you a brief history of this clan. That way, you will understand some of the things we do here. Hisashi spoke as the two walked slowly alongside the pool to the meeting hall. Since this village was founded and our clan moved here, our dojutsu, the Byakugan, was revered about as much as the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. In the beginning, we had to deal with our enemies trying to capture members of this clan to put the Byakugan to their own use, which is what you just saw happen with the Kyumo Nin the other night. Almost immediately, the clan leaders of that time came up with a seal. It would effectively protect our Byakugan from capture by permanently sealing our eyes if they were removed forcefully or death occurs. It worked brilliantly. With this method, it was almost impossible for any enemy to capture the Byakugan. It incurred a high cost, however. Hisashi paused to take a breath. Naruto was paying full attention. What cost is that? The boy wanted to know more. Total subversion for the ones who carry the seal. There are two groups in this clan, the main and the branch lines. Whoever has the seal belongs to the larger and more populous branch line of this clan. Hisashi explained as he pointed to their left at the large collection of small but well-kept houses, then pointed to their right across the pool at the more luxurious houses. Those who doesn't have the seal belong to the smaller but more powerful main line, and they are in charge of the entire clan. The main members usually are raised to control this clan, deal with politics, and other more important functions. The branch members are allowed some freedom, but they must obey whatever any main member commands. If disobedience occurs, the main member may decide to use a special hand seal to incur unbearable agony as punishment on the branch member. This can even lend to mental damage or death. Ever since the beginning, we have been separated, the branch family forever serving and protecting the main family. Hisashi finished and glanced down to see an upset-looking Naruto. That's too cruel. No clan should have to be like that. I never had a family or a clan, but I can't imagine relatives being forced to serve me just because we were born into this. We should all be equals, he muttered with a sad expression before looking up at Hisashi. Hisashi-san, you're a main member then. I mean, your brother is the clan head, so it makes sense, right? Hisashi shook his head with a sad smile, much to Naruto's shock. I am of the branch line and I serve my brother. The seal is here. Hisashi replied as he pointed to his forehead covered by the Hittite. My brother came into this world a few minutes before me, and that was the difference between us because we are even in skills, intelligence, and other attributes. The main family groomed him while I was branded with the seal. In addition, because I was a few minutes late and ended up on this side of the pool, my son, despite his potential as an incredible Hyuga prodigy, was automatically branded. My two nieces will eventually have to face the same fate as my brother and me someday. When Hanabi-sama is old enough, the clan elders will determine who would be the true heiress of the clan, and the other will be moved to the branch family. Hisashi explained, and he could see the little boy was about to have an angry outburst. The man decided to interfere by holding a placating hand on the boy's shoulder to calm him down. Naruto had to hold his anger in, and then he looked downcast and shook his head in frustration. Uzumaki-sama, I am sorry this has upset you, but I wanted you to understand a little of this clan's traditions. When you see something here you may object to. Whatever happens here inside these walls, it generally would be best to not interfere and leave it for the clan's business. Now, we are here," Hizashi pointed out as they arrived at the main meeting hall's large double doors. Hizashi opened one of the two doors, allowing Naruto to step inside, and followed him in. They moved down a hallway, and they could hear grunts and fists striking flesh. Hizashi opened a smaller set of doors, and Naruto finally caught sight of the training area. It was apparently set up as either a meeting or dueling hall with 3 cascading rows of wooden benches surrounding a very large flat square area set against the back wall. Naruto could see a small indigo-haired girl, in a black skin-tight training outfit, attempting to land a hit on a tall man wearing white training robes in the middle of the stage. They were obviously sparring. The boy felt a hand on his shoulder, and he glanced up to see Hizashi silently nodding his head toward a particular section of seating. He complied and followed his escort to sit farthest from the sparring so as not to distract either of the combatants. Naruto could only watch in amazement as Hinata tried to hit her father with a flurry of fast, at least for him, and precise strikes aimed at his limbs. He was particularly impressed when Hayashi knocked her to the floor hard with a nasty downward palm strike to her cheek, but she immediately got up to keep trying to land a hit on her father. He definitely liked the guts she was showing, at least. After a few more minutes of sparring, Hayashi suddenly held a hand up signifying that their spar just came to an end. The two fighters then straightened up and bowed to each other. "You are improving, my daughter. You have managed to close one of my tenketsus earlier than last time," Hayashi commended as he seemed to flex his left hand. "Your kata need work, however. Practice them and we will train again tomorrow afternoon. For now, I see you have a guest," he stated as he glanced up at Naruto and Hizashi. Hinata was confused for a moment until her pale eyes finally locked with blue eyes after searching the meeting hall. Her only reply was "Eep," as she instinctively hid behind her father's legs. Hayashi and Hizashi exchanged amused glances while Naruto was wondering what was wrong with Hinata after her complete 180-degree from a fighting badass to a bumbling introvert. "Now you should not be rude. Do not be shy and greet your guests properly." Hayashi smirked as he gently pushed his daughter around to his front. Hinata was losing her nerves and her eyes were wandering, looking at anything in her vision except for Naruto himself. Hizashi gently nudged his charge to get the boy's attention. He then motioned with his hand for the boy to get closer to the girl and her father. Naruto complied, making his way down the steps to the main floor to stand face to face with a very nervous Hinata, who still would not look him in the eyes. With an incline of his head in greeting, Hayashi left them alone to talk some things over with his brother. Hello Hinata-san, I stopped by here to let you know I'm alright, since I thought you'd like to know that. By the way, that was some cool fighting you did. What was that called?" Naruto curiously inquired. Hinata blushed at having her martial arts skill being called cool. "Ayano. We train in the G-Gentle Fist. We use it to strike W with chakra to inflict internal damage, instead of external like most other fighting stances," she bravely replied, but still unable to look him directly in the eyes. "That's incredible. I guess that's why I saw that Kumo guy fall apart even though there was no damage on the outside. Your dad was really awesome," Naruto exclaimed before he realized something. "Wait, when I met you at that playground you could have fought those bullies off, couldn't you?" The question made Hinata flinch visibly and a cloud seemed to form over her head. "I'm sorry, and Naruto-kun. I just don't like hurting anyone if I can help it," the pale-eyed girl mumbled as she looked dejectedly down at the floor while poking her 2 index fingers together. "Well, that's no good. I'd hate for you to be hurt, and if you could defend yourself, you should do it," Naruto admonished gently with a serious expression, and there was clear concern in his deep blue eyes. Hinata could not help but blush at that. "I suppose you're right. I'll try my best next time," she replied with a shy smile, finally locking her eyes with his. Naruto gave one of his trademark foxy grins and nodded in approval. "So, your uncle told me you have some free time after this. Do you want to play together or something?" he then tried to offer, hoping his new friend would say yes. Hinata nodded quickly. "No, I'd like that. Just let me clean up and get changed," she replied with another blush and quickly made her way toward the changing room. Naruto looked after her departing figure until she was no more, before he turned to the twin brothers. "Hayashi-sama and Hizashi-san, was that really the same person that hugged me out of nowhere the other night?" Maybe she's got a twin like you too? He curiously inquired as he was pointing in the direction of Hinata. The twins exchanged amused grins. I will admit that was a very rare occurrence for my daughter. She is rather shy and unwilling to stand up for herself in most situations. That was why I was impressed when I was told she actually made it difficult for the kidnapper before you rescued her, Hayashi admitted. The blond boy put a finger to his chin, and his eyes squinted fox-like as he became deep in thought. She didn't do anything like that until she saw me sneak up behind the Nin. I wonder why she suddenly tried so hard at that moment, he innocently said. The two brothers raised an eyebrow each as Hinata picked that moment to return in a simple pink kimono. After some small talk, the two children excused themselves to go play together elsewhere, and the twins were left alone. That little, he is already stealing my daughter's heart, and he does not even realize it. I should teach him a lesson, Hayashi suddenly murmured to his twin in an annoyed tone. Hizashi smirked a little. He is only a child, brother. I doubt Hinata-sama realizes it as well. We should just let them grow and find out themselves, Hizashi advised and heard his brother let out a small sigh. I am not looking forward to my daughter's teenage years. If Hinata turns out to be anything like Hitomi-chan was, she would only remain shy until she decides one day to do what it took to get and keep her man. I should not say this as her father, but I am not betting on Uzumaki-san's chastity lasting long. Hayashi spoke in a resigned tone. Hizashi had to smile at the memory of his brother's deceased wife. Not only that, but imagine the headaches our elders will give you when these two become close, Hizashi pointed out playfully and enjoyed seeing one of his brother's eyebrows twitch slightly at the mention of the elders. That comes with the territory of being the clan head, I suppose. However, have you noticed something about Uzumaki-san? Hayashi inquired, changing the subject for now. Yes, brother. He looks like a young version of the fourth Hokage, and his somewhat mischievous nature reminds me of Uzumaki Kushina. Brother! You don't suppose? Hizashi would have completely lost his calm at the implications if he weren't shocked into silence upon seeing a very rare full-blown smirk form on Hayashi's lips. He looked truly devious. If you remember, we have had good relations with Minato-san, and we were privy to the fact that he and Kushina-san were in love and secretly married. You should also remember that we have not seen Kushina-san anywhere in the village for about 6 months until the Kyuubi attack. That day, we have heard the sad news of her dying along with the fourth, on the same day young Naruto was born. It is possible that if she had been actually pregnant with that child, she would have kept any sign of showing hidden until after birth for security concerns. One last thing that could make this more believable. We knew Minato-san personally, and how could he have used someone else's newborn, even an orphan, to seal the Kyuubi? I see him trusting only his own child to carry the burden. Hayashi finished his deduction to his younger brother's growing astonishment. Brother, if that is true. Hizashi sputtered before his older brother held a hand up for silence. It is just speculation without solid evidence. We should keep this information hidden for now, at least until this could be used as a bargaining chip against the elders should they object to my daughter's growing involvement with the demon brat. They will not be able to resist the prospect of having our clan linked with the powerful traits of the lost clans of Uzumaki and Namikaze. This is all for my daughter's happiness should she wish to pursue Uzumaki-san in the future. Hizashi allowed himself to regain his composure and formed a smirk of his own at this devious plan. He was curious about something though. Brother, you seem quite convinced that Hinata-sama may choose Uzumaki-sama as her lover in the future, even though they are quite young and have just met each other. He pointed out to his older brother. Hayashi just closed his eyes and allowed a tiny grin. It may be somewhat undignified of a noble main member to speak like this. Hizashi almost snorted at this private joke between them. They never agreed with this clan's segregation and took to occasionally poking fun at that tradition. But I would have to call this a hunch. A very good one, too. Hayashi finished vaguely as his thoughts went back to when he met Hitomi at around the same age as Naruto and Hinata now. His daughter was so much like her mother it almost frightened him. 2 hours later Naruto found himself standing outside the Hyuga compound's gate exchanging goodbyes with Hinata and Hizashi with promises of visiting again soon. As he walked away, he was happy about how things went with Hinata. She was a little weird with all the blushing and stuttering, but she was really kind and he could see himself being good friends with her. He found it funny that she was clueless about some of the games that other kids played outside the compound walls such as tag and ninja. He easily won at tag but was rather humbled playing ninja with Hinata as she usually found him easily with her Byakugan. Note to self, Don't play any kind of hiding games with any Hyuga. That aside, Naruto, did you check out that girl's body when she was training? Kurama asked from Naruto's mind, before she almost smacked herself in the face for asking such a loaded question. Yeah, what about it? Naruto replied, not catching on to anything. The fox sighed in relief that her container was still young and naive. Bless your naivete, boy. Anyway, that is how a properly developed body looks. Her clan was focused on taijutsu training and proper nutrition almost from birth. She was fast, limber, and agile. Were she so inclined, she could kick your ass 8 different ways in the first 5 seconds with the way you are right now. Kurama stated as a matter of fact. Naruto had to bitterly agree with her assessment of his current condition. In your case, you have a natural disposition towards strength rather than speed like her. That is not to say we cannot make you fast, but your physical attacks will be devastating when you can fully utilize your strength. In 2 months, we will work strength into your body but also make sure you stay as quick and agile as your body would allow. For now, just focus on your exercises until then. Naruto nodded his affirmative before he had another thought. How do you know so much about human training methods? I was not always a monster who razes villages to the ground for no good reason, you know. I did observe humans in various forms throughout my long life, and while I was trapped in my 2 previous containers, I had a good and up-close look at how shinobi train. The fox explained before an idea struck her. That reminds me, we will need to get you started on studying history, tactics, math, human anatomy, and science. Every day after the morning exercises, when you are not busy, you will go to the library and spend the afternoon studying the books I pick out for you. She finished in a no-nonsense tone as Naruto flinched in terror at the prospect of having to read anything without pictures. First you take away my ramen, then you destroy my body, and now you want to bore me to death? Oh, stop whining like an infant. A strong body works best with a strong mind. A clever tactic you study now may save your life later when you remember it in the heat of a battle. You can effectively damage any human body with as little force as you need if you know where exactly to strike and what amount of pressure to apply. Studying famous shinobi and clans now may help you later if you ever encounter any of these shinobi, or their offspring, since specialty jutsus are generally passed down. These are just few of many benefits of having knowledge. The fox lectured. Naruto didn't want to admit it at all, but he knew she was absolutely right. Besides, it's only for the first couple months as you build your body up to acceptable levels. After that we will get more practical, and you'll only have to read just 1 or 2 books per week in addition to what they may teach you in the academy. Kurama allowed. Naruto nodded in resignation as he continued to walk back home. 2 days later, the past 2 days have been quiet. The only thing even remotely exciting that happened was when Naruto was kicked out of the public library on his first visit. The Hokage immediately appeared afterward though, and kindly asked for an explanation from the terrified librarian. When she could not provide an adequate response, the boy was allowed back in. The librarian was then reminded that she might be called in to talk with Marino Ibiki of the interrogation department to provide her supposed reason the next time she tried something again with Naruto. She swore to never even look at the blonde the wrong way since that day. I guess studying history isn't so bad. The battle at the Canopy Bridge was pretty awesome. Naruto mentally spoke to the fox as he was walking toward the Hokage Tower from the library. Glad to see you're taking well to your exercising and studying. Kurama approved in his head. You work fast, Kurama. I can already feel my body changing. The blonde thought as he flexed his arms some, noticing a little bit more muscle as he entered the Hokage Tower and went up several floors. He noticed a lone figure walking down the stairs from above. He scowled when he saw the cloud insignia on the man's armband, denoting that this man belonged to Kumogakure. The man was wearing the most arrogant and victorious smirk the young boy had ever seen on anyone. He did not pay the wary blonde any notice as he passed by and continued down the stairs out of the building. Naruto was glaring holes into the man's back the whole time until he was out of sight. He then disgruntledly spit on the floor where that man stepped through and continued up. Something was wrong, and he could feel it with each step he took closer to the Hokage office. There was a feeling of heavy pressure in the air and it seemed to be trying to crush him. By the time he reached the landing, he noted the secretary by the office's door was gripping on to her desk's edge with white knuckles and trembling, clearly scared out of her wit. At this point, the pressure was so strong and deadly that the boy himself felt like running back down the stairs and all the way out of the village, never to return. This is that old fart's killing intent. He's seriously pissed. The fox calmly clarified. I'd say. I want to faint, and he's not even directing it at me. I think it had something to do with that Kumo guy. I've never seen Hokage Gigi this angry. Also, it doesn't sound like this is bothering you one bit. Naruto inquired of his tenant, who just scoffed. Please, this is like a gnat threatening a full-grown elephant. The fox replied dismissively. Says the one who left me to his mercy the other night when he was asking nicely about us. Huffed Naruto. In my defense, that smile was scarier than anyone's killing intent, and I am looking at the world from a small human boy's perspective, not from a giant bijou able to squash puny humans with just my pinky. The killing intent in the air slowly lifted, much to the relief of the secretary and the blonde boy. A long moment of heavy silence passed before Naruto brought an index finger up. I don't suppose this is a good time to visit him, Taimi-chan? He tried to say in good humor. The cute young brown-haired female chunin, doing secretary duties this week, violently shook her head. You're kidding me, right? You had to have felt that too. I like you too much to let you go in there now, Naruto-kun, she warned with a glare that brooked no argument. The boy just nodded his head and turned back in the direction he came from. I suppose you're right. I'll see you tomorrow then. Naruto agreed with a wave over his shoulder as he disappeared down the stairs. Now what? Now we find something else to do. There is no hurry in getting to that training field anyway. How about we repeat what we just did this morning for the evening? You should be able to handle that now. Kurama said thoughtfully as the boy winced at the prospect of more exercising. On the other side of the office's door, the Hokage felt Naruto's presence fade as he left the building. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but other things are on my mind at this moment. He thought as he sat in his chair and went back over the conversation that just happened with the Kumo ambassador. 15 minutes earlier. Would you repeat that again? The third ground out with barely constrained anger at the man standing in front of him, the new ambassador from Kuro. The man remained stoic, despite trembling violently on the inside in face of the powerful Hokage's anger. A good politician had to bluff all the time, after all. You heard me. Under the guidelines of our new peace agreement, we demand reparations for the wrongful death of one of our most prized retired shinobi. You also wrongfully did an autopsy on him without our permission and certainly have learned all of his secrets by now. The only way Reikage-sama will be satisfied is if we are allowed to retrieve an intact body of the man responsible for our ambassador's murder. The new ambassador spoke with a stern expression. You will forgive me for saying this, but bull-fucking shit. We have evidence and witness accounts that placed your retired shinobi in the act of kidnapping Hyuga Hinata. We obviously followed procedure with a hostile shinobi in our territory. The Hokage almost shouted as he slammed a fist on the desk, cracking it a little. What evidence is that? We have confirmed reports that there were absolutely no traces of our previous ambassador anywhere in the Hyuga compound and none on the Hyuga girl who accused him of abducting her. Here is what we feel truly happened. The previous ambassador was just taking a walk outside the compound wall when a young and infamous prankster decided to surprise and assault the man. Why would he have expected an attack in a village he had just signed a peace agreement with? The ambassador spoke calmly with a fake puzzled look before continuing. And to make it worse, the boy yelled out a blatantly false statement that would send a random man nearby into a blind rage. After the ambassador was brutally murdered by the same man, the Hyuga clan attempted to cover it up by having a young innocent girl lie about a kidnapping attempt and procured the gag and rope themselves. The reports also said that the young prankster himself disappeared right before the other Hyugas appeared, apparently not wanting to be caught responsible for the ambassador's demise. Because of that, he cannot be considered a reliable witness, even if we did not take his history of being an untrustworthy public nuisance into account, the ambassador said, laying out all his carefully prepared lies. The Hokage kept his deadly glare burning into this hateful man, but inwardly he was stunned. What this man said nearly matches the official A&B report word for word. That Kumo kidnapper really did not leave any trace, even on the young girl in the ropes, which was a near impossibility. How did Kumo get their hands on the report and Naruto-kun's file? Because the A&B reports could be accessed by any means with high enough clearance, I ordered them to strike Naruto-kun's near-death experience, the Kyuubi's chakra, and any evidence, including the blood and kunai used by the Kumo nin, from the official record. This was all done to protect the S-rank secret of Naruto-kun's jinchuriki status. I didn't think it would come back to bite us in our collective ass. I honestly believe we have a better case than you do, and we will win if we held court in neutral territory over this, especially when we call your entire village in as witness to the young prankster's character. With that, I will repeat our one simple demand. Give us the intact body of the man responsible for our ambassador's murder. If you do not comply, I have been personally authorized by the Reikage to declare our newly signed peace treaty dissolved, and we will escalate our military's presence on our border," the ambassador reiterated. "You dare threaten us?" the third snarled, increasing his killer intent at the ambassador, who blanched a little. "We are simply doing what was required in response to the unprovoked murder of one of our most respected retired shinobi. Are you sure you want to risk heavy losses for an alleged murderer if things were to escalate between us? We all know Konoha is still weakened by the Kyuubi no Kitsun's attack. I'm also sure your current reports state that our military force is already back up to full strength after the last Great War. I wonder how your village, weary after so many losses, would feel if it was found out many more deaths could have been easily prevented by the life of one single man? You don't have to worry about this being public. We will keep this quiet, and you can just explain the Hyuga man's death in any way you want." The ambassador pressed his advantage. The air grew heavy with tension each passing moment as the Hokage seemed to contemplate killing the man in front of him to just go ahead and get things started with Kumo. "Get out!" the god of shinobi finally spat out before he did something he would regret. The ambassador decided not to press his luck anymore and made for the door. "I will be back later tonight for the official response," he quickly blurted out before exiting. After Hiruzen felt Naruto come and go, and he had a few minutes to gather his thoughts, he realized there was no way out of this. It would either result in the death of one man or the deaths of many in a village with its morale still low and tired of death. He sighed and waved his hand. A dog-masked silver-haired ANBU instantly appeared in front of his desk. "Inu, you have heard all of that. Find the leaks in the ANBU information network and seal them. Use any means necessary, and I don't care who are responsible. Just make sure to pump them for all information they have before they disappear," he ordered. "It shall be done, Hokage-sama." Kakashi almost growled from behind his dog mask, angry at having been compromised. He then disappeared out of the office to carry out the new orders. Hiruzen, who was feeling every bit of his old age, tiredly stood up and looked out the window at his village, as if this would help him come to a decision. He remained staring at the sun slowly setting beyond the majestic forest surrounding this quiet village for almost an hour, before he finally turned around and buzzed Tammy on the intercom. The coming darkness seemed to signify the Hokage's sober mood. "Get me Hyuga Hayashi. Tell him this is urgent." Chapter 4, Defying Fate PT2. Previously, Hiruzen, who was feeling every bit of his old age, tiredly stood up and looked out the window at his village, as if this would help him come to a decision. He remained staring at the sun slowly setting beyond the majestic forest surrounding this quiet village for almost an hour, before he finally turned around and buzzed Tammy on the intercom. The coming darkness seemed to signify the Hokage's sober mood. "Get me Hyuga Hayashi. Tell him this is urgent." Later in the evening in the Hyuga meeting hall. "This is unacceptable, brother! How could you have already agreed to this?" Hizashi exclaimed at his older brother just after Hayashi relayed the Hokage's account of his meeting with the Kumo ambassador. They were standing on the main floor among the top elders from both branches of the clan as they argued over this development. "Your brother is right. We cannot allow you to be sacrificed. You are the head of the Hyuga clan, the most noble and respected clan in Konohagakure. Even more importantly, we also cannot allow our Byakugan to fall into their hands," cried one elder. "Let the cowards fight us. We will beat them back like we always have done," another elder raged. Hayashi held out a hand for silence. "I appreciate your sentiments. However, we have no choice in this situation. Kumogakure has outmaneuvered us completely. Even if we decline the reparations, then go to war and somehow come out victorious, what do you think will happen? This country, weary of conflicts, will blame this clan for this new conflict and we will lose our reputation and standing. This is my fault, since I have killed the man in blind rage without any thought to the consequences afterward. I have failed one of my own teachings in always accessing any situation with a calm heart and mind. For that I must pay," Hayashi stated calmly, obviously prepared to meet his fate. "This does not mean you should just give yourself up. You have a responsibility to rule over our clan and ensure its continued prosperity." Hizashi tried to reason with his older brother, but he and the other rebellious elders were suddenly struck silent by a large blast of killing intent. "That is enough. This has already been decided. Our loyalty is to the village first and the clan second. It was, has been, and will always be that way for as long as this village stands. I will not allow myself to be the one person responsible for the possible destruction of our home and our children's future." The clan leader paused to calm himself. "I only came here to inform you of my decision and offer my goodbyes, not to allow any of you to change my mind. I have already spoken of what I need for all of you to do after my death, and I expect all of you to carry out your tasks." Hayashi then directed his gaze at his twin. "The same goes for you too, my brother. You must understand why I have to do this, and I expect you to raise my daughters alongside your son to be strong in my stead. Now, I do not have long, and I wish to spend my remaining time with my daughters before I leave to face my fate. I wish you good fortune after this dark day. Farewell." He finished his speech. He then immediately walked out of the hall, pointedly ignoring several still protesting elders in his wake. Hizashi clenched both of his fists hard enough to draw blood and gritted his teeth. "It is you who do not understand that this clan will fall apart without you. The elders will panic and try to use both your daughters to gain more power and influence with others who would take advantage of the confusion. I cannot imagine them ever being happy when they may be used as political tools any day. Worst of all, I will be powerless to stop all this because of this damnable seal." He almost growled at that thought, before his expression softened some. "I can feel this clan is inching ever closer to the day when this segregation would end and my son will be one of the first few to be set free. However, I fear that will never come to pass without you as clan head to oversee this. For once, the clan truly needs you more than the village does, and I will go against my own fate in order to save you and this clan, brother." Hizashi left the hall with a determined gait, heading for his house. Hizashi's house. A few minutes later, Hyuga Niji knew something was wrong tonight. His father hadn't come back home yet, and the entire compound was in an uproar. He had a bad feeling about tonight, as if his life would change forever after this. It was just like the night before he lost his mother on her last mission when he was younger. The front door opened swiftly to reveal his grim-faced father entering. Hizashi then immediately went into his bedroom to get changed from his gray robes into a set of pitch-black mission robes, as if he was getting ready for a night mission. Niji was watching all of this with increasing trepidation. "Is something the matter, father?" He tried to get his father's attention, but Hizashi continued his preparations, seemingly ignoring his distressed son. Only when he finished a few minutes later did he turn toward and kneel down in front of the young boy with an expression that seemed to say he was going off to a battle he would not return from. Niji's lips began to tremble and tears were now streaming down his cheeks. "Niji, my son, I need you to know that I am extremely proud of you. Despite that damnable seal on your forehead, you continue to excel and outshine everyone else in this clan, even your two cousins. It is because of that you will be able to live on and grow stronger even when I am not around. Tonight, I am going out to make a choice I can be truly proud to call my own after having been mocked by fate my whole life." Hizashi then gripped his crying son's shoulders tightly. "Someday you will be freed from your curse, and you will be able to make any fate your own. In the meantime, continue growing strong and do your best to protect the clan and those that are precious to you. Do you understand me?" Hizashi implored of his son. Niji was stunned at his father's unusually passionate speech, but he didn't dare say anything, for he believed if he did, then his father would take that as the cue to leave and not return. Unfortunately for him, Hizashi continued anyway by tightly hugging his son with a whispered "I love you," before releasing and rising to leave. Niji did not want this, and quickly latched onto his father's leg tightly. "No! Father! You can't!" His pleading was cut short by his father's soft chakra strike to the back of his neck, completely unseen. He instantly relaxed and fell limp in his father's arms. As he was gently laid on the living room's couch, the last thing Niji saw before his eyes completely closed was his father putting a blanket over him with a serene expression, like how one would put his son to bed any night. Same time at Hayashi's home, Hayashi stared down at his two beloved daughters sleeping in each other's arms in their favorite place, which was a large and very comfortable chair in the living room. Hinata and Hanabi apparently tried to stay up late because their father was suddenly called away for his talk with the Hokage. They wanted to greet their father when he came home finally, but they fell asleep before that. Hayashi smiled forlornly. He did not want to leave them, but he wouldn't allow them to experience war if he could help it. He reached down to gently rub Hinata's forehead. She shifted a little under the touch and ended up resting her cheek on the top of her younger sister's head. Hanabi was curled up in a small ball on Hinata's lap, her head resting against her older sister's chest. Hayashi let out a shuddering sigh and allowed a tear to roll down his cheek before wiping it away. He would truly miss them, and prayed to every deity out there that they would pull through after his death with his brother helping them out. After a long minute of standing over his sleeping daughters, he gently laid out a blanket over them to keep them warm. After one more reluctant glance, he then quietly left the living room and was about to make his way out when he was stopped by a female voice. "Will you be coming back, my lord?" It took all he had to not show visible shock at being addressed out of nowhere. Slowly turning his head to glance in the direction of the voice, he found one of the female branch members, Hyuga Tomo, standing off to the side wrapped in a simple sleeping yukata with her arms crossed underneath her ample bust. Her fingers were nervously gripping her elbows. Her long and luscious black hair, reminding Hayashi of Kushina's memorable red hair due its incredible length and volume, was braided now for sleeping and hanging loosely over her shoulder. She was an incredibly beautiful woman even for the usually high standards that all Hyuga women easily met. She was also kind and motherly, which was why he personally selected her as the primary caretaker for his daughters after Hitomi's unfortunate death. She did an excellent job raising them since that fateful day, and he had come to truly admire her loving, yet slightly mischievous nature. None of that was present on her terrified expression as he stared unblinkingly at her for a long moment. "Yes, I am." That didn't seem to calm her at all as she nodded jerkily with hitched breaths. He didn't think she was convinced at all, and let out a small sigh. "Tomo-san, I do not believe I have told you yet that I am eternally grateful to you for helping raise my daughters. I feel we would have been lost without you around, and they truly do consider you to be their mother now, if not by blood at least." Tomo took a shuddering breath as she allowed several tears to escape her pale eyes. "Why you honor me with your kind words, my lord. I truly do feel blessed to have been invited to serve your family, and I can only hope I did Lady Hitomi proud in her stead." Hayashi closed his eyes and smiled fondly at the memory of his deceased wife. "Believe me when I say you have done much more than that. Please continue to watch over my daughters," he stated sincerely, and bowed his head gratefully to the now trembling caretaker. "I must go." "And my lord," Tomo whispered brokenly as she seemed to reach her hand out for him, who was already walking with his head high through the door out of the house. He didn't look back. Letting out a choked sob with her outstretched hand now covering her mouth, the caretaker slowly turned her head to gaze lovingly at her charges, who were still sleeping in each other's arms looking adorable and peaceful. "Your father can be a terrible liar sometimes," she muttered with a faint smile as tears continued to stream down her cheeks. After bowing to the gate guards, Hayashi slowly made his way alone down the long and dark walkway leading from the compound into the village. It was nearly midnight as he slowed his pace. He did not need to be at the Hokage Tower for a good while, and he would enjoy this final stroll before his upcoming death. It was interrupted, however, when he suddenly stopped after a few minutes of walking and instantly activated his Byakugan. "Whomever you may be, you cannot hide from my all-seeing eyes. You may as well come out now," he quietly declared to a nearby lone tree on the side of the road. The tree's dense leaves shook and split open to reveal a black-clad man leaping down upon Hayashi's ready form. Hayashi effortlessly dodged a preemptive palm strike from the landing assailant before he rushed in to disable the man. He would not make the mistake of killing his opponent this time. He would just merely beat this man to within an inch of his life instead. He opened with a blindingly fast flurry of two-fingered chakra strikes, which his attacker easily parried or matched blow for blow. Dancing around each other like a pair of graceful performers, the two combatants descended into a beautiful and almost quiet exchange of blows and parries that went on for a long minute with either party landing a successful hit. It wasn't long before Hayashi realized he was facing a gentle fist user, and an excellent one, too. He was also irritated to find that his Byakugan couldn't penetrate through the man's head wrappings, preventing his attacker's identity from being revealed at this moment. Somehow, this man had access to the anti-Byakugan seals usually used by ANBU for their masks. "You aim to defy your clan head's wishes. Why?" he quizzed tersely as he increased his tempo to try to overwhelm his attacker. The black-clad man remained silent, however, and easily matched his pace, before shoving him back to get some distance. This was so he had room to spring into a fast combo that just barely managed to overwhelm Hayashi's defense, leaving him with a numb right arm. Frowning at his unmoving arm as if it betrayed him, Hayashi snapped back to the attacker with a cold glare as he reared his left arm back. "Hack Kusho, 8 trigrams vacuum palm!" A powerful and precise blast of pure chakra shot out of his palm in the direction of his attacker. However, the black-clad man was prepared and easily somersaulted forward high into the air over the blast. Crack! The blast instead hit the tree the assaulter was just hiding in, breaking the tree's top half off, and it crashed to the ground with a loud thump. Meanwhile, the airborne man easily sailed over his opponent, twisting in the air to avoid one more blast of vacuum palm that continued harmlessly into the night sky. He then landed behind Hayashi, who was already whirling around and striking out to meet this man's assault. However, it was still too much, as the assaulter easily rushed in under the strike and deftly disabled his opponent's remaining arm with several more juken strikes. Hayashi stumbled back with a growl, not willing to give up even with his arms sealed. He tried to spin to activate his Kaiten, revolving heaven. However, his attacker already anticipated this, as he quickly dashed in to gracefully land a flurry of juken strikes along the length of his left leg. Almost stumbling onto the ground in an undignified heap, Hayashi barely managed to remain standing on his good leg with nothing but the full extent of his pride. He let out a defeated sigh as he watched his attacker relax and straighten up to slowly remove the head wrapping. "If I had known it was you from the beginning, I would gone through this scuffle much more carefully and differently. It is rather irritating to have my every move predicted rather effortlessly." The black-clad man finished removing everything, revealing himself as the identical twin of Hayashi. "Hisashi. Indeed, that is why I have hidden my identity. It was the only way to defeat you, Hayashi." The clan head snorted slightly as he allowed his brother to gently help him over to the tree trunk he just broke in half a moment ago. "Do not patronize me. You have always been slightly more skilled than I. I find that interesting, because I believe the opposite," Hisashi retorted with a small smirk as he helped his twin sit down against the tree trunk in a dignified manner. Hayashi would not be able to get to some help on just one leg without crawling, which would be bad for the clan head's image, so the only thing he could do was to wait and recover his mobility. Hisashi squatted down next to him with a regretful sigh. "Forgive me, my lord. I feel I must disobey your orders." "Hisashi, why are you doing this? You know they will not just give up on this. You should not have stopped me, unless you want to be responsible for the death of thousands," Hayashi tried to reason as he stared his brother in the eyes, despite his immobile body. "Any conflict with Kumogakure will not happen, and I will make sure of it. However, you must live. Your daughters and our clan need you alive more than this village needs you dead. I have decided I will take your place instead to ensure the best possible outcome for both the clan and village." Hayashi's eyes widened slightly as his brother continued. "Since I am your identical twin, they will likely not have noticed the switch until after the reparations have been confirmed through the official channels. By the time they discover the ruse, there would be nothing they could do without making fools of themselves internationally. As a result, we will be able to keep the Byakugan out of their hands. This is what I have chosen to do in order to protect our clan, and especially our own family," Hisashi explained with a determined expression. "What if you are wrong and they decide to go to war anyway? You will have died for nothing, Hisashi. What about your son?" Hayashi tried to reason once more, his desperate eyes locking with his twin's steady eyes. Hisashi broke eye contact after a moment, slowly stood up over his brother's form, and stared longingly back in the direction of the Hyuga compound. The people in Kuma would have to be imbeciles to go to war over a false body. Deception is a large part of a shinobi's job after all. We just have to get them to think they have won until it was too late. They then would not be able to do anything without looking like fools. Hisashi let out a slightly exasperated sigh before continuing. "For a man with all-seeing eyes, you are blind to how much your daughters need you without Hitomi-sama around. Only you would be able to truly ensure their freedom and happiness, since I will not be able to do much as long as I carry this seal on my forehead." Hayashi had to agree with that assessment, but there was no one else he trusted more than his own brother. "Niji is mature and capable already, and you know as well I do that he will be able to handle himself just fine. My only request in regards to my son is that you help guide him into becoming a strong and honorable man in my absence." Hisashi finished and smiled like a prideful father at the thought of his son, before his expression turned somewhat sad. "Forgive your little brother his selfishness. All my life, I felt like I have been mocked by fate, especially when my beloved son, and once-in-a-lifetime prodigy, was branded simply because I was a few minutes late in our own births. Tonight is probably my one chance to make a true choice, to die the way I choose, doing what I want, which is to ensure the best outcome for the clan, and more importantly, the best future for our children." He spoke thoughtfully while Hayashi could only listen in silence. "Before I take my leave, I want you to understand this, Hayashi. I may have resented my fate, but I never resented you at all our entire lives. I will always be proud to have served the true head of our clan and, more importantly, proud to be your brother. Hizashi ended his heartfelt speech by moving calmly in the direction of the Hokage Tower, never looking back while leaving his final words behind. Goodbye, big brother. Hayashi could only sit in silence, his head following the departing figure of his twin. He already lost his desire to plead for his younger brother's return. How could he continue when he had seen nothing but fierce resolution in those pale eyes, as his immobile body remained propped up against a lonely tree next to this lonely stretch of the dark walkway, his quiet voice carried out into the still midnight air that just barely reached Hizashi's ears. Goodbye, little brother. 15 minutes later in an empty park near Hokage Tower. Wow, that was rough. I took way too long finishing those exercises this time. Naruto thought as he leaned back on a park bench, exhausted from his latest round of exercises. That is to be expected with your body still recovering from this morning's routine. You did well, actually. Tomorrow you will rest both your mind and body. Either spend the day at home or go out with your friends. Kurama decided in the boy's head. He nodded, glad for the brief reprieve. Uzumaki-sama? A voice surprised Naruto into sitting upright on the beach as he snapped toward the source. He saw that it was Hizashi coming into view, easily recognized by the Hittite adorning his forehead. Hizashi-san? What are you doing out here this late? I should be asking the same of you. It is more odd for a young child to be out here compared to an adult merely taking a stroll. Hizashi inquired with a raised eyebrow as he stopped nearby. Naruto put on a sheepish grin and scratched the back of his head. Hee, I'm sure you've realized I'm not like most kids. I was just resting after finishing my exercises and was about to go home when you showed up. Hizashi nodded, satisfied with the explanation. I see, Uzumaki-sama. I am on my way to see Hokage-sama for a mission, so I shall see you around. He politely dismissed the conversation as he made to walk past on the way to the Hokage Tower. Naruto had something on his mind he wanted to ask, though. Hizashi-san, if you have time, I have a question. He called out in an apprehensive tone. Hizashi stopped to glance back at the blonde and inclined his head to show he was listening. I was thinking about what you said the other day about your clan's history and the seal. If it was so bad, why hadn't anyone come up with a better seal? Something that everyone in the clan can use to protect the Byakugan without all that pain and control. Naruto carefully inquired in a neutral tone. Hizashi was surprised by this question and had to take a moment to think over his answer. I am not exactly sure, Uzumaki-sama. My best guess is that, in the beginning, the clan was proud of the seal as it protected their pure bloodline from being stolen and tainted by their enemies. They did not realize the implications that they just laid the foundation for a truly segregated system the clan is using now. By the time the branch members became dissatisfied with the way things have become, the entire clan were already set in their ways. It is now tradition to use the seal and they all just accepted it as the way of life. I suppose that is why not many have thought about modifying the seal up until now. He offered and Naruto could only furrow his eyebrows together in deep thought. You know, Uzumaki-sama, you are not the first one to ask me this. Hinata-sama asked me a similar question not too long ago, the Hyuga added. The blonde glanced up at him with a raised eyebrow. Hinata-chan did? So she doesn't like the system either? Hizashi shook his head. She never has. She is kind, does not enjoy having servants, and she hopes to one day see the use of the seal band. Wow. I was going to say that, since I might be Hokage one day, I was going to fight to get this seal banned and have them find another way. However, it looks like it'd be a lot easier when Hinata-chan get to be the next head of the clan and we could work together. Naruto muttered thoughtfully as he cupped his chin and squinted his eyes fox-like. Hizashi raised an eyebrow and kneeled down in front of the boy to level his pale-eyed gaze with a pair of blue eyes. What makes you believe you might be chosen as the Hokage? I just began training, but I'm going to be the strongest shinobi ever. I have to if I want to protect my precious people. And when you become the strongest shinobi in the village, you become the Hokage, right? It's just natural. Naruto replied as if this was the most obvious thing ever. The Hyuga was instantly reminded of the fourth Hokage at this reply. He raised his other eyebrow, then broke into a chuckle. Naruto was a little unnerved by seeing a composed Hyuga chuckle heartily. Maybe that's why they wear such stoic expressions. It's pretty disturbing. I agree wholeheartedly. The older man suddenly ruffled the blonde's hair, much to his cry of chagrin, and stood with an amused grin. Uzumaki-sama, you will have to work hard then since there are many powerful shinobi out there, but I believe you may be able to do it as long as you have your precious people to think about. My son, Niji, will be incredibly strong and he might aim for that Hokage seat someday as well. You two may likely end up being rivals. The man had to smirk deviously at the boy's slightly affronted expression at the thought of someone being as strong as him in the future. However, I also have high hope that the two of you will get along eventually and be good friends. Now I need to go, so be sure to get home safe and have a good evening. Hizashi finished by bowing slightly and turning in the direction of the Hokage Tower to begin walking again. Hizashi-san, can you tell me what this mission is? Naruto quickly blurted out. The older man stopped for a moment and spoke without turning around. I cannot tell you, but I can say it is to protect my own precious people. Goodbye, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto watched the Hyuga disappear into the darkness toward the Hokage Tower, feeling a slight bit uneasy. Let's go home. There's nothing to do out here. Kurama suddenly spoke up. Naruto frowned, but just shrugged and began making his way toward his apartment. The fox was deep in thought, however. That man had the eyes of a warrior who's content with all he did and is strolling toward his death as if it was a simple walk in a park. Something is happening tonight, but it's best not to let this boy know just yet. There is nothing we can do right now anyway. In the Hokage's office, the third Hokage sat at the desk, waiting patiently for the arrival of Hyuga Hayashi. In the room with him were two A and B, one of them Kakashi, and the Kuro ambassador. In the center of the office was a scroll laid out with a large storage seal array. The ambassador was growing nervous by the second as the other three occupants leveled their glares at him, as if they were wishing for him to slowly die by melting into a puddle. I expect this to be kept quiet. We will deny anything if this comes to light. The Hokage ground out through gritted teeth. The ambassador flinched at the leader's harsh tone before nodding nervously. When you retrieve the body, you will sign this statement that declares you have retrieved your so-called reparations for Kumogakure, and we will not speak of this ever again. Is that understood? The third continued as he pointed at a piece of paper on the desk, his glare intensifying. Believe me, we want to keep this quiet on our ends too. I will sign as soon as I have confirmed it was Hyuga Hayashi himself. The ambassador tried to steel his own nerves against the third's anger, but failing miserably. It felt like eternity for him under the unbearably imposing presences of the two Anbu and the Hokage until the office's door finally clicked and creaked open to reveal Hizashi Hyuga. It took the Hokage all he had to keep his face schooled in a neutral expression even with the massive shock he was experiencing. The Anbu were lucky they had their masks on, and it took considerable effort to keep their bodies from showing any reaction. What the hell is going on? Why is Lord Hayashi's twin brother here? Was the singular thought of the three as they easily recognized him by the Hittite always covering the seal on his forehead. Lord Hyuga Hayashi reporting, Hizashi said shortly with a scowl. The Hokage saw something in the new arrival's pale eyes that made him think he should at least play along. He really hoped this man knew what he was doing. You have come, Lord Hayashi. You do understand why you are here, correct? The ambassador asked nervously, visibly relieved at having a distraction, as Hayashi walked to the center of the office. Yes, I am to die and give up my body for my crime of killing one of your retired shinobi for no reason. Let us just get this farce with so I do not have to deal with any of you thieving cowards a second longer. Hayashi retorted dismissively as if the Kumo man was even less than a cockroach to him. The ambassador bristled at the tone and insult but said nothing, not wanting to cause any more problem than necessary when they were so close to their goal. He then took out a photo of the real clan head to compare to Hayashi's visage. The 1 minute the ambassador spent studying and comparing between the photo and the person was the longest ever for Hizashi, the Anbu, and the Hokage. It's a match. Take your Hittite off and we will proceed. I'm sure Hokage-sama would prefer to keep the insignia here, the ambassador suggested, and another new bout of tension was rising in the air. They knew they would be found out if Hizashi took the Hittite eye off and revealed the hidden seal. If it is all the same to you, I am doing this as a duty to protect Konohagakure from an unnecessary war. I would prefer to die knowing I have served my village to the very end, so please allow me to keep my Hittite on until after my last breath has left the body. Hayashi coolly replied without missing a beat. The ambassador took a moment to think before silently nodding. Everyone almost exploded with relief, but they had to keep up the charade. Hayashi kneeled formally on the floor next to the sealing scroll and closed his eyes as if in mediation. A long moment of grave silence persisted in the air before the dog-masked Kakashi decided to begin preparing for the inevitable. However, the Hokage stopped him. "I will do this one. It is my responsibility, since I allowed this to happen," he grimly said as he slowly moved behind Hayashi and took a small quick injection syringe from the ANBU. He then gripped the kneeling man's shoulder tightly and leaned his head down next to his ear. "I am really sorry for allowing this. You will receive the highest honors and your clan will forever remember you as a hero," he whispered, his voice breaking slightly. Hizashi only nodded once with a serene expression before he felt a small prick at the base of his neck. He felt a calming numbness overtake his entire body almost all at once. It was welcoming, actually. His last thoughts were of his older brother and nieces, his deceased wife, and finally, his son. He let a small smile grace his face. In just 3 seconds, his body fell limp in the Hokage's grip, devoid of all life. Hyuga Hizashi had just passed away instantly and painlessly as a hero to his clan and village. Sarutobi Hiruzen silently and gently laid the body down onto the ceiling array with trembling hands. After a moment of silence out of respect, he slowly removed the hitai to reveal that the seal disappeared, having already worked its magic sealing Hizashi's Byakugan and all of its secrets. The people in Kumogakure would not be able to learn anything from this man's body now. The third then sealed the body into the scroll with a loud poof. The ambassador silently walked over to the desk to sign the statement. As he set the pen down and turned around, he cried out in surprise as a hand suddenly grabbed him by the neck and swung him into a wall, cratering it inward. The ambassador was trying to let out a strangled cry of protest when he was frozen solid by the Hokage's glare and killing intent. Hiruzen's face was old and wrinkled, but his eyes looked virulent, cold, and calculating, as if they were the eyes of Shinigami looking at its newest soul to eat. The ambassador felt like he truly would die any moment just looking into his powerful gaze. "You may have won, but this will be the last time. After tonight, no Kumo ambassador or shinobi is welcome here until further notice, unless absolutely necessary. That means you will leave the village's premises within 10 minutes of this conversation, or I will have you imprisoned for open hostility. In addition, if I ever see one single Kumo nin set foot anywhere in our country without express permission from our people for any reason at all, you tell your Raikage I will personally come and show them exactly why I have lived this long, and why I am known as the Kami of Shinobi." The third Hokage spat out before he harshly tossed the terrified ambassador to the floor with a loud crash. The whimpering man thought of nothing but escaping as he frantically scrambled to his feet, grabbed the scroll, and ran out the office as fast as his feet could carry him. It was as if the Shinigami was breathing down his neck. "Follow him all the way out to the lightning border, and make sure he can't even stop for rest. In addition, send someone out to the Hyuga compound to deliver the news and ask for an explanation." The third growled as the two ANBU bowed and vanished. He was not relieved that they might have protected the Hyuga clan's secret. He was still angry that he still sacrificed a life to supposedly protect thousands. It did not matter if it was a nobleman or a servant. A person's life was still lost this day, and he had to allow it on his watch without any resistance. All of the emotions Sarutobi Hiruzen kept in all day finally overflowed as he yelled in rage and smashed his fist on the desk, splitting it in two. The next morning Naruto noticed something was different in the air around the village. Life went on as normal to most people, but to him, he could feel that something was somewhat off. He relayed his feelings to his tenant as he was walking around, enjoying the morning air. "Stop by the tower if you want. Maybe that old fart knows." Kurama only had this suggestion to offer. Naruto, having nothing else to go on, decided to detour to the tower anyway. He entered, made his way up the stairs, and was led in by Tammy. The blonde was surprised to see his surrogate grandfather, sitting behind what looked like a new desk, looking so old. The third was exhausted, having been up all night dealing with all kinds of emotions. He felt and looked defeated. He was so deep in thought he did not notice Naruto entering the office at first, and raised his eyebrows in surprise. Oh, hello Naruto-kun. What can I do for you?" He tried to pull himself back together, and keep some semblance of a facade up. "Nothing, Hokage Gigi. It's just that I haven't seen you in a while, and I figured I'd stop by for the permit and chat a little. Though, it looks like you have been through a ringer lately," Naruto pointed out, seeing the old man wince slightly. "So I think I'll just pick up the permit and leave to do other stuff for the day," he added for the third's benefit. The tired old man sighed and looked somewhat grateful for this thoughtfulness. He got up to retrieve the prepared permit out of a folder and passed it on to the boy. They were about to exchange goodbyes before Naruto remembered something. Hokage Gigi, before I go, I was wondering if you know something about Hyuga Hisashi? I ran into him last night near here. He told me he was coming here for a mission, something to protect his precious people. I was wondering if he's okay now. The Hokage stiffened with a grim expression, and that was all he needed to see. His entire inside became ice cold as his blue irises turned icy and shrank to small dots. Don't tell me, was all he could squeeze out in trepidation. The third's expression softened into sadness and simply shook his head no. I am sorry, Naruto-kun. I will tell you he died very bravely and with honor for what he believed in. He had no regrets. Beyond that, I cannot tell you the details myself. It is up to Lord Hiashi to offer more if you still wish to know. The suddenly frail-looking man tiredly admitted. He knew. Naruto whispered before his face twisted into anger, his blue eyes still icy. The third narrowed his eyes in confusion. He knew. He knew already he was going to die. That's why he talked to me like that last night. Why did you let him go? If you knew it was going to happen, why didn't you protect him like a Hokage was supposed to? The boy shouted at his surrogate grandfather in tearful rage. He didn't want to stick around to hear any excuse and sprinted out of the room, leaving a crushed old man behind. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. You will come to learn this is easily the worst part of being a Hokage. The exhausted and crestfallen village leader quietly whispered to no one in particular. Later at the Nara compound. Rut. Nah. Was all Naruto made out from a very faraway voice in his dazed confusion. He just couldn't seem to stop going over what happened with the Hokage this morning in his mind. It was like an infinite loop. Naruto! Yelled a voice that was very close by, and it finally shook him out of his dazed thoughts with a dumb expression. He took a look around to see he was sitting across a shogi table from a familiar lazy-looking pineapple-haired boy his age, Naruto Shikamaru. Naruto then quickly remembered he spent an hour sulking and holding back tears after berating his surrogate grandfather. Afterward, he ate something he didn't even remember now, and walked aimlessly around the village just for something to take his mind off what happened. He then ran into his friend on the streets. Shikamaru noticed something was wrong and offered for his blonde friend to come over to his place to cheer up. Now, the brown-haired boy was putting on an annoyed expression as he muttered troublesome and pointed down at the table, which had a match in progress. Sorry, Shika. I've been out of it lately. Naruto mumbled pitifully as he moved one of his white pieces without a thought. His friend's eye twitched in annoyance at the new move and went into the thinking pose for the 5th time in this match if he had been paying attention and kept count. Oh, I got you thinking now. Guess that's somewhat a personal victory for me now, he remarked half-heartedly as he tried to clear the cobwebs from his head. Shikamaru raised a twitching eyebrow. This isn't the first time you've forced me to do this. Troublesome, it looks like you're truly an idiot savant if you just don't pay attention at all while playing shogi, he muttered grouchily as he came out of his pose and moved one of his black pieces. I resent that remark. Naruto grunted indignantly as he moved one of his own pieces without another thought again and took one of his opponent's pieces. Shikamaru growled in frustration and went back into his thinking pose once again. You know, you just proved his point. I have never seen such sloppy play, but you just keep getting out of trouble against vastly superior strategies. It's like what you are doing is organized chaos. In my thousands of years existing, this is simply astonishing. Kurama offered her thoughts in clear awe. Not you too, Fox. Naruto groaned mentally. Troublesome, remind me to never challenge you to a match when you're in a bad mood. This is hard on my brain. Shikamaru grumbled as he moved one of his pieces into position to be sacrificed. Naruto furrowed his eyebrows at that move, and wondered what his friend thought of sacrifices. Hey Shika, what would you think if you had to sacrifice your own life for a cause? Would you be angry at the person who asked you to do it? Naruto quietly asked, his eyes staring down at the table. Shikamaru stared at his blonde friend silently for a long moment. That's an odd question to ask a kid, you know. If you want me to answer that seriously with what I know, I would say that the only reason I'd be angry with the person asking me to sacrifice myself is if I knew there were other options, other ways of solving whatever troublesome situation I was dragged into. However, if it was the only choice and I was saving the people I cared about, I may find it troublesome, but I'd accept it with a clear conscience. The Nara heir replied with a sigh. Intrigued, Naruto thought over that answer as he moved his own piece to take his opponent's sacrificial pawn. Shikamaru capitalized on the trap he set and took advantage. You know, Naruto, it's troublesome to say this dash, he murmured as he effortlessly took another one of his opponent's pieces. But my dad told me this when he first began teaching me shogi. He said that in many ways, a shinobi's life is almost like a game of shogi. You use strategy, tactics, traps, and sometimes sacrifices to win your battles. The only reason we do all of this is because we have to protect our king no matter what. Naruto was still deep in thought as he carelessly made another move that Shikamaru was prepared for. Our king? I guess that'd be the Hokage? He asked as his eyebrow twitched in annoyance with his growing disadvantage in this shogi match. His friend just shrugged. I asked Dad that, and he was being troublesome about it, saying that we decide who or what is our king that we absolutely must protect at all costs. The pineapple-haired boy replied offhandedly as he moved one of his pieces for a checkmate and called it. Naruto just groaned and cursed. Damn it! You win, for the 68th time in a row! Anyway, I wonder what Hokage Gigi considers to be his king, he muttered as he properly put his pieces away. I think that's a question that shouldn't be troublesome even for you to answer. Shikamaru raised his eyebrow as he cleaned his side of the table. His friend smacked his forehead loudly. The village and everyone in it. Of course. He smirked and muttered troublesome blondes before rising. Oh, you want to stay for lunch? Mom will be glad to have you over. He shrugged as if he didn't care if his friend stayed or not. Naruto's stomach growling was the answer. Several hours later, outside in the clan's district, remind me not to go back there for a meal, Kurama. Yoshino-san didn't go easy on me with the etiquettes lessons today. Naruto groaned tiredly as he left the Nara compound. She's doing you a favor. What she was trying to show you today was how to eat properly with nobles. Everyone and their mothers know you're a favorite of the Hyuga clan head now, and that bossy female probably figured she'd get started on helping you impress anyone if you were invited to any formal dinner. The demon fox reasoned. I guess I can live with that. It's just that I'll never understand why there were 4 different forks. And 3 different glasses. I'm underage and I can't even drink 2 of them, anyway. The boy and the fox continued chatting within as he walked his usual route past the Hyuga compound. The blonde took a moment to pull out of his inner conversation to check things out at the front gate. He saw the guards were dressed in all black, and he could feel that the entire clan's mood was subdued even from outside the compound. He then bowed his head in condolences toward the guards. A little surprised, they returned the bow nevertheless. The boy then continued past at a slow pace, deciding he would give it a few days before it was alright to stop by. Uzumaki Naruto. A tight voice rang out from behind. Turning around in confusion, Naruto's eyes landed on a lone and slightly larger boy standing in the middle of the walkway 10 meters away. He was dressed in all black with his long black hair tied together in a loose ponytail, and the blonde saw that he had the pale eyes of the Hyuga clan. He looked like his whole body was tense with coiled-up anger. They stood staring at each other in silence for a long moment. One boy was trying to figure out who this Hyuga was, and the other was trying to burn holes through his blonde counterpart with blazing eyes. Yeah, that's me. I don't think we've met, Naruto inquired with a confused eyebrow. The boy quickly shifted into an aggressive kata of the gentle fist. You do not need to worry about my name. You will not need it after this. The boy snarled as he sprinted toward the bewildered blonde with killing intent. Naruto. He intends to kill you. Just get away. You can't beat him now. Kurama yelled into her container's mind. Naruto was so flabbergasted by the situation and the yelling that he just stood there as he took the angry boy's first strike square in his throat. The blonde was blown back, spitting out blood as he went down hard on his back. He was in so much blinding agony just trying to breathe and clutching at his throat that he didn't notice the long-haired boy had moved to stand over his body and began a flurry of 2-finger strikes at many tenketsu all over him. He could do nothing but scream hoarsely with blood coming out of his mouth, as even more incredible agony slowly enveloped his entire being while his attacker continued the enraged assault. Finally the angry boy stopped and straightened up, breathing heavily. Uzumaki Naruto, I have left your vitals for last because I want to make you understand that you will suffer as long as possible for my father's death. The boy growled down at the battered blonde. Realization finally struck Naruto. Why you're a Niji? He painfully tried to get out through his blood-flooded throat as his entire body continued to scream in agony, not being able to move at all. The long-haired boy now named Niji flinched at hearing his name and narrowed his eyes angrily. Who told you that? He snarled, his Byakugan blazing. H. Hizashi. Guh. Was all Naruto could force out before he was struck hard in one of his kidneys. The pain he felt before was nothing compared to now, and he nearly passed out from shock. Don't you dare say that name in my presence! You do not deserve that honor! It's your fault my father sacrificed himself in his brother's place. If you hadn't interfered with the fate of a weak person like my cousin, it wouldn't have led down a different path toward the death of someone truly strong, like my father. Neji spat out, his eyes blazing even harsher. Naruto, despite the extreme agony, frowned. H. Chao Sikin Yu Tt had a about Hinata? He pushed out through the pain, more dark blood pouring out of his mouth. She is weak. I have decided that weak people like you and her should not interfere with the fates of the strong, the Hyuga replied with a sneer. Be bullshit T. YUS should be protecting her, ARGH. Naruto screamed out and gurgled again as Neji slammed a churka strike into his left lung. A weak and dead person does not get to tell me anything. Neji's face darkened ominously before he prepared to go for the finish. Naruto, we're going to have to break your promise with that old fart. I'm going to pump my churka into you, a lot of it. You're not ready and you may go berserk with the power, but it's the only chance. Kurama was cut short by an ear-splitting scream of agony that was not coming from the Naruto but from the Hyuga boy instead. Neji was screaming at the top of his lung to the high heaven as he clutched at his forehead tightly, and was about ready to tear his hair out. He fell down next to his blonde victim and flopped like a fish in unbearable pain. Naruto was stunned and utterly confused at this abrupt change in the situation, until he noticed an approaching man wearing the same black funeral robe as Neji. It turned out to be Hyuga Hayashi holding one of his hands up in a seal. He also looked pissed as hell. The boy quickly connected the dots. The clan head had just activated Neji's caged bird seal to stop him. That's enough, please! He tried to force out as loudly as he could, and was relieved when he saw Hayashi release the hand seal a second later. Neji's scream ceased abruptly, and he was now gulping for air, apparently unconscious. The Hyuga clan head glared at one of the gate guards nervously approaching the three. Get this moronic boy to confinement, and leave him there for a month! No visitors except for me! He snapped harshly as he made his way over to Naruto and kneeled down. The guard quickly scooped up Neji's unconscious body and carried him away into the compound, while the clan head then activated his Byakugan to scan the blonde's body for any major damage. Nothing looks fatal and you are already beginning to recover, thanks in no small part to your dash. Naruto noticed a pause about his tenant. Incredible healing most likely, Uzumaki-san. You were fortunate when the guards reported my nephew running out after you a few minutes ago, and I decided to investigate. I think this is what you call a case of déjà vu, since I've had to look over you the other night as well. Hayashi spoke softly as he continued to scan the body. Naruto had to hold back a chuckle. Please don't make me laugh. I heard all over. He grunted with a pained smile. That is what most people generally say after their first time facing the gentle fist. I truly apologize for this unforgivable behavior from one of my clan members. Hayashi said sincerely with his head bowed, before letting out a weary sigh. I could have you rest inside or have you transported to the hospital on our expense if you wish, Uzumaki-san. I think I'll recover soon enough, so I'll double your weight wherever you put me if it's okay, and thanks. Naruto was now beginning to speak more clearly as he got used to the pain. He groaned a little when Hayashi picked his limp body up carefully and carried him into the compound toward the largest and most luxurious-looking house sitting on the right side of the long reflecting pool this time. Good thing this guy arrived in time to save you. The alternative would have made the entire village crap their pants with the feel of my released chakra alone, and then converge on us with pitchforks and torches. Though I'm disappointed somewhat, since that stupid brat just barely avoided being pasted across the compound wall like graffiti. For now, I'm pumping my chakra into you a little more than normal so you should recover sooner. He sure did a number on you, and it's surprising you haven't fainted from the pain yet. Kurama spoke up from inside. Sorry to make you feel my pain. We're sharing a link, right? You said you'd feel what I feel. Naruto thought guiltily as Hayashi opened the door to his house. Oh, you needn't worry. I didn't tell you I could turn any of our shared senses off at any time. I keep that particular link off most of the time since you only seem to attract trouble. The Great Fox replied dismissively, and Naruto was twitching his eye non-stop. Give me back the apology, and the sadness I actually felt for your possible pain. Damn lucky fox. The boy huffed while his tenant snickered. Hayashi arrived in the living room and carefully set the boy in his arms down on the carpeted floor, quickly removed the blood around Naruto's mouth with a damp towel, gave him some water to clear out anything in his still recovering throat, and procured a blanket and pillow. "Uzumaki-san, you may rest here for as long as you need. I do have business to take care of, so I will need to take my leave. My daughter should be home soon. Just explain your situation to them if you are awake, and all should be well." Hayashi explained with an incline of his head. He was about to leave when Naruto stopped him. "Hayashi-sama, I should tell you I already know about my tenants so you don't have to tiptoe around it. Hayashi blinked at this. "And I'm sorry about your brother's death. I can tell you two were close from the other day." He forced himself to speak without stuttering in pain. His host allowed a sad nod after a moment's pause. "We shall speak more of this when you recover. For now, just get some rest and I shall be back before too long," the clan head replied as he stepped out. Naruto decided to heed his host's suggestion and closed his eyes. 3 hours later, Naruto could still be heard gently snoring away on the floor. The relative silence of the living room was finally broken by the front door sliding open to admit two young girls wearing all black, one clearly older than the other by several years. "Nei-chan, can we play games after dinner?" Hanabi childishly asked as she tugged at the sleeve of her older sister's black kimono. Hinata sadly smiled and rubbed a hand on her younger sister's head. "I don't think we should do that so soon yet, Hanabi-chan. This is a day of mourning for our uncle," she replied as the girls made their way further into the living room. Hanabi had an impatient scowl on her face before it turned into curious scrutiny as she noticed Naruto on the floor. "Who is that?" She pointed at the boy. Confused, Hinata just followed the direction her little sister was pointing in and yelped in shock as she noticed the still form of her savior. "And Naruto-kun!" she cried as she immediately kneeled by the blonde and activated her Byakugan to see what was wrong. She gasped in shock as she observed what looked like minute amount of the same red chakra she saw the other night mixing in with Naruto's dense and dark blue chakra inside the body. She also noted some of his tenketsu were recently closed forcefully, but was also relieved that they were slowly opening back up. "He was attacked by one of us. What happened?" she worriedly thought as Hanabi kneeled down next to her. "Naruto? The one who beat that bad guy?" Hanabi inquired as she searched over every inch of the boy with her gaze. Hinata only nodded in response, and the little girl grinned wide. "Then I'll call him Oni-chan, since he saved you." Despite the serious situation, Hinata had to smile at her little sister's antics. Hanabi was already taken with Naruto apparently. While the girls were contemplating how the blonde ended up injured and resting in their home, their father had just entered the living room, back from whatever business he was taking care of. "I see you have discovered our surprise guest, my daughters," Hayashi announced, surprising the two girls with his voice. Hanabi recovered quickly, ran up to her father, and latched onto his leg cutely. "Father, why is Oni-chan here?" she somewhat demanded as Hayashi patted the top of her head. He had to hide a smirk at his youngest daughter already calling his new favorite blonde such an affectionate nickname. He wouldn't have to worry about both of his children getting along with Naruto now. He also noticed Hinata had the same expectant look on her face as her little sister, awaiting his explanation. "Uzumaki-san was attacked by a stupid young boy with a misguided grudge about his father's death. He was unable to move, so I decided to have him rest here until he recovers," he finally admitted with his eyes closed in exasperation. "And Niji-Nizan did this? Why would he blame Naruto-kun for uncle's death?" Hinata's stutter disappeared mid-sentence as she showed a flash of anger in her eyes. Hayashi did not miss this. This boy is already doing wonders for Hinata's self-confidence. Note to self, fabricate reasons to get them together more often from now on. He thought offhandedly as he prepared his response. "It was a misguided decision on my nephew's part to direct his anger about the loss at this child. Unfortunately, I do not think he will ever let this go until they meet in battle in the future and finish it." He spoke with resignation in his voice. "Ano, that's terrible for Naruto-kun," Hinata whispered as she dreaded the thought of her new friend being hurt again, especially by one of her relatives. Hanabi showed an angry yet cute expression as she devised plans to tell Niji off for this. "I am going to prepare some dinner since Tomo-san has the day off. In the meantime, please leave Uzumaki-san to sleep in peace and get changed for tonight," Hayashi requested of his daughters, and they obeyed with Hinata leaving the blonde alone somewhat reluctantly. Some time later Naruto smelled something lingering in the air before he slowly opened his eyes. It smelled like curry? On that cue, his stomach growled loudly. His eyes opened wide quickly at that sound and sat up, only feeling a little tender from his earlier beating. He glanced around to see he was still in the living room, which was now dark, and noticed Hayashi through the only lit doorway nearby. The man was kneeling at a desk in the room beyond. It was apparently a study, and he looked like he was busy looking over a large collection of papers and scrolls. Looking around a little more, he heard what sounded like very cute snoring from nearby. Following the sound, he saw two girls cuddled together in the large living room chair just a few feet from him. They were wrapped in a blanket, and he saw one of them was Hinata. The smaller girl curled up in her arms must have been her younger sister, Hanabi. They seemed to have fallen asleep waiting for something, maybe for him to wake up. Uzumaki-san, now that you are awake, I would be most pleased if you replenish your energy with your portion of the dinner I made, which is being kept warm in the kitchen stove. Please take your time eating before joining me in the study when you are finished. Do not concern yourself over cleaning up afterward. Hayashi's calm voice carried out into the living room, being quiet enough as not to wake either of the two girls. He hadn't turned his head around at all the entire time as he continued to go over the paperwork on his desk. Naruto decided to quietly do just what his host suggested. 10 minutes later, after eating some of the most delicious curry he ever tried, he quietly stepped into the study and his host finally glanced up from the paperwork. Please close the door and have a seat, Uzumaki-san. Hayashi gently requested of his guest as he gestured with his hand toward a spot across the desk. Naruto quickly complied as he quietly slid the office door closed, before moving to kneel down opposite the clan head, who took a moment to clear his throat. I want to apologize on behalf of the entire clan for Niji-san's unprovoked attack against you. I have no excuse for his misguided anger upon you, Hayashi regretfully said as he deeply bowed his head. Naruto frowned as he thought for a moment. Hayashi-sama, is there really a need for an apology? He replied softly while Hayashi raised his head in mild surprise. He continued quickly. Niji-san did say I was responsible for the events that led to your brother's death. What if that's right? Utter nonsense. If that was actually true, then if my brother had not taken my place, you would be responsible for my death instead. If you had allowed that Kumo-nin to leave without any resistance, then you would be responsible for my daughter's unthinkable fate. There is simply no way to know what could have happened with the infinite amount of scenarios this entire event could have played out. My nephew lost his mother early in his life, and now just lost his father. In his grief, he apparently decided to direct his anger at someone, and you were unfortunate enough to be the target. I shall reprimand him most severely for this, and ensure he stays away from you until he calms down. Hayashi assured his guest. Hayashi-sama, I'd appreciate it if you just let Niji-san be, and if he still wants to take his anger out on me in the future, let it happen. Train him more for it, even. I'll take it all and beat it back tenfold into him until he finally moves on. Naruto declared with a steady voice after a moment's thought, stunning the clan head. You should understand that he is the most promising prodigy of this clan in generations. He is much stronger than my brother, and I when we were his current age. He was not joking about killing you. He will do it whenever he finds a chance. He pressed. That's fine with me, sir. With the training I just started, I'm going to be the strongest shinobi ever someday. I want to protect my friends and I can't do that if I'm too weak. I think it definitely will be a good match when we eventually meet. The blonde replied with a confident smile, showing no trace of hesitation in his blue eyes. Hayashi had to wonder if this child in front of him was way too mature for his age, or just simply excited about the prospect of a rival. Nevertheless, I will not allow any duel between you and my nephew within this compound, and I will inform him any further unprovoked attempt on you will be punished more severely. The two of you will have to find a way to get an official match outside of this compound, and that likely would not happen unless you both are enlisted in the shinobi force. I will not allow any less. Is that understood, Uzumaki Naruto? He spoke sternly as he narrowed his eyes at the blonde boy. Perfectly clear, Hayashi-sama. Naruto accepted with an incline of his head before continuing. I hope this happens and he lets it all out. I'd hate for him to continue being angry with me for long, since Hisashi-san hoped we'd get along when we talked last night. He muttered sadly. Hayashi raised his eyebrow at the mention of his brother. Uzumaki-san, you have met my twin brother last night? Naruto nodded and quickly relayed what transpired between him and Hisashi in the park outside the Hokage Tower. A long moment passed as Hayashi seemed to contemplate this. I see. I am glad he seemed calm and ready. I was worried he may have had regrets since this all happened suddenly, the clan head finally said with a sigh of relief. Naruto decided to satisfy his curiosity. Hayashi-sama, if it is okay, I wasn't told by anyone exactly what happened. I'd like to understand his actions, he asked with some apprehension. Hayashi allowed himself a small grin as he nodded and explained everything that happened. 30 minutes later, Naruto was clenching his fists tightly in anger. Those Kumo bastards, that's not fair! They can't get away with this, even if they didn't get the Byakugan. The boy growled through gritted teeth before his expression softened with realization. I just understood he did all this to protect his king. This wasn't because he served the clan or the Hokage. I need to apologize to Hokage Gigi soon, he muttered sadly, feeling immensely guilty for yelling at his grandfather figure so harshly. Hayashi raised an eyebrow. The shogi analogy the Nara clan likes to use? In my opinion, it is a somewhat rigid description of a shinobi's situation in many cases, but I understand where you are coming from. Most of us have our king we are willing to protect with our lives. Hizashi most certainly did it for that reason alone, and I was willing to do anything to protect my king too before he took my place. You should understand Hokage-sama did not order either one of us to die for the village. I immediately offered myself upon hearing Kumo's demands, and it is only because my brother's desire to protect his loved ones was slightly greater than mine that I am still here and alive in front of you, Hayashi said thoughtfully as Naruto nodded soberly, his eyes downcast. It's still not fair. Kumo's going to get away with meaningless murder, and there's nothing we can do about it. The boy grumbled before looking up. At that moment, an ice-cold shiver went down his spine as he saw a truly malicious and devious smirk growing on the clan head's face. It was a truly terrifying thing to behold on one of the most powerful people in Konoha, and the young blonde had a feeling that someone was going to regret ever crossing this man very soon. I dare say that I have doubts that Kumogakure is going to get through this without any consequence, if all have gone as planned. Great minds think alike, and my younger brother had the exact same plan as I did when I was preparing to meet my death. I have seen a glimpse of what he was preparing with my eyes when he disabled me. I will say it was a good thing we regularly studied up on all diplomats' mannerisms and personalities, and I am confident that bumbling fool from Kumo would not check closely for anything on the body. It would be safe to assume that not getting the Byakugan will not be the only surprise for our dear friend, the Raikage. Hayashi replied smoothly with the malicious smirk still plastered on his face. That expression was not even directed at Naruto, yet the boy was wide-eyed with terror at seeing this man's visage. He knew it would haunt his dreams for a while. A certain fox inside him shivered with excitement, her hackles rising slightly down her spine. Kumogakure in Raikage Tower, the exhausted and battered ambassador, had just returned from Konoha, and in record time too. Yae was displaying an amused smirk as the man told him about his harrowing experience with the Hokage's rage, and the Anbu as he was chased and hassled by two of them all the way to the lightning's border. A few minutes ago, the large and muscular man handed the scroll with the clan head's body off to a lab assistant for processing down in the tower's basement. He should be getting news soon. To be honest, he should have been more ecstatic about this victory for Kumo, but he could not help but feel a little uneasy about something. He tried to dismiss it as the occasional paranoia, but a good shinobi simply did not survive long without being cautious. "Oh, did you actually check for any seal on the Hyuga body?" he suddenly asked the ambassador out of nowhere. "Yes, I did, on the forehead, right? It wasn't there when they removed his Hitaiite," the ambassador replied. Yae scowled. There was that paranoia rearing its ugly head, and it was here to stay. Was this before or after death? Our reports on the seal says that it will disappear shortly after death, he replied with deadly calmness, having a feeling he knew the answer. The ambassador gaped at him in stunned horror, and his mouth flapped like a fish with no sound coming out. The Raikage clenched his fists and gritted his teeth just as the feeble man finally spoke. It was after death, GH! He choked out when the fourth Raikage moved with insane speed to grab him violently by his neck. The huge man loomed large over him, leaning in close with an angry snarl. You goddamn fool! That was why they easily let this happen with only token resistance. That clan head had an identical twin that was branded and could have easily substituted with him. The clan head also has never been known to wear any type of Hitaiite inside the village. And you signed the fucking paper confirming that this body is Hayashi Hyuga, not his twin. Now we can't even raise some uproar about this, else we look like the jackasses here, not them. You're the worst ambassador ever. He raged at the man, shrinking and shrinking in his grip with each word. He groaned in disgust at this man's cowardice and stupidity, before swinging the now former ambassador around to throw him out through one of the floor-to-ceiling window panes at the back of his office. It shattered with a thunderous crack, and the mountain wind blew in harshly, blowing papers everywhere and ruffling EI's wreckage. Haori. The large man grunted and spat out the window as he listened to the man's scream fading 20 stories down. A faint thud followed. He didn't care if the man survived or not as he sat down in the chair and leaned back with the wind buffering his tightly wound platinum blonde cornrows around, resignedly awaiting the bad news from the lab as he rubbed his temples in preparation for an incoming migraine. What he did not expect was a massive explosion shaking the entire building. It even shook him out of his chair. After the explosion died away, EI immediately rose to his feet and gritted his teeth. He figured he could guess where exactly the epicenter was as he turned his lightning armor on with a shroud of crackling lightning covering his entire body. In the next instant, the office's door was obliterated into tiny pieces as the wreckage charged through, tearing up a gouge in the floor underneath him as he instantly flickered to the stairwell. Using a combination of amazing acrobatics and his armor's super speed, he bounded like a lightning down the 20 flights of stairs to the basement level. He made the basement door his next victim as he skidded to a stop upon arrival. He had just gone down 20 stories from his office to the basement in under 5 seconds total. It was chaos. Half the people were running around in panic and the other were running damage control with smoke, fire, body parts and broken equipment everywhere. An entire room in the center of the basement level had all of its walls blown out into other rooms. Yai then deactivated his lightning armor and glanced at a bruised and battered person sitting next to him on the floor who just became aware of the wreckage's arrival. "What happened here?" he asked with a neutral tone, and his gaze was steady on the destruction, though he probably already knew. "A very powerful time delay explosive tag. Hidden on the Hyuga specimen. It was activated when he appeared. Out of stasis from the scroll." The disheveled lab worker stammered in broken sentences as he tried to shake off his daze. The large man sighed heavily, totally exhausted with everything. He tried everything and still lost, yet he could not even bring himself to get angry with this. He brought this on himself by trying to deal a cheating hand. They just returned the same favor tenfold, and he was the one worse off in the end. He would bet the Hokage never knew of this. It was likely prepared by this Hyuga on his own. He might as well cut the losses now before it got silly between the two villages. The fourth wreckage of Kumogakure let out a defeated groan as he began helping the people in the basement level deal with the destruction. At least he had a very solid reason to tell the council to back the hell off about kidnapping more Kekkai Genkai holders. Back with Naruto and Hayashi, Naruto stared at the clan head unblinkingly with mouth agape and eyes wide open. The fox was very impressed, which was saying a lot. Hayashi's devious smirk had been replaced by a neutral grin, as if the last few minutes were forgotten. "Hayashi-sama, if I may speak freely, your brother was a vicious and evil bastard. Same goes for you too," Naruto muttered bluntly in all. "I did not get far in my political and shinobi career without some measure of trickery and backstabbing. I know better than anyone else that I am a vicious and evil bastard, and my brother deserved that description even more. Even in his death, he will remind them not to trifle with our clan again, or they would pay a toll even heavier next time." Hayashi replied calmly as he continued to gaze over some more paperwork. Naruto had to let out a chuckle. Just how the hell did either of you get your hands on some demo-class explosive tags? Even a kid like me know they were very heavily restricted after the last war. He quizzed curiously. Hayashi just turned and stared at the boy in silence with a blank expression for a long moment, as if he was waiting for the young blonde to just get it. He did finally get it and gave a sheepish grin. "Right. Powerful political figure with friends in high place." Naruto pointed out the obvious with an embarrassed chuckle. They allowed a comfortable silence to settle in the study as Naruto went over what he learned for a minute. He finally decided it was getting late and he needed to get home. "Hayashi-sama, I should get going. It's late dash." He was about to politely dismiss himself when the study's doors slid open to reveal a very sleepy and wobbly Hinata in her light purple pajama outfit with some white frills. Everything fell silent as Hayashi stopped shifting his paperwork and observed his daughter with a blank expression, while Naruto was surprised into silence by this sudden intrusion. Hinata looked somewhat out of it, shifting her gaze sleepily between her father and her new friend. "There you are. Naruto-kun, don't just walk off like that," she grumbled tiredly, while glaring lightly at Naruto through half-lidded eyes. Before the boy could say anything, she stumbled up next to him and flopped down to lay her upper half across his lap. She then hugged the blonde tightly around his waist, and one side of her head was fully pressed up against his chest. Naruto was shocked speechless by this sudden action. "Stay. You're warm," she mumbled into his chest before falling asleep again with a cute snore as his heartbeat lulled her back to dreamland. He was stone still for a few long and uncomfortable minutes before he realized Hayashi wasn't making any attempt at admonishing or removing Hinata. He slowly glanced up to see her father had gone back to his paperwork like his daughter was not even there. Hayashi-sama, may I politely inquire about what you are doing? He strained to not let his irritation at Hayashi's feigned obliviousness show through. I am just going over the expenses reports for the entire clan. Only I can approve these or the clan would fall apart. What would they do without me? Hayashi murmured with such blatantly fake innocence. Naruto swore he saw a ghost of a smirk on his face just now. My apologies if I am interrupting your very busy schedule, Hayashi-sama. He was impressed with himself for almost keeping the sarcasm out of his tone. However, as you can see with your all-seeing eyes Okay, sarcasm is steeping in. One of your precious daughters is cuddling up tightly against me, and I can't move. The boy finished urgently, his cheeks red with embarrassment. I have noticed this, but thank you for pointing it out. However, I am very busy and cannot spare even a second. You will have to wake her if you wish to leave, or wait until I have finished and I can put her to bed then. Hayashi replied coolly without missing a beat. Naruto narrowed his blue eyes. He just knew Hayashi was smirking like a dastardly man on the inside. He sighed in defeat, but he wasn't going to play the clan head's game. He would just wake Hinata, who was sleeping with a heart-wrenchingly adorable expression, then apologize for rousing her and leave. I should inform you my daughter is what one would call the antithesis of a morning person. She has been known to repeatedly use her gentle fist to fend off anyone from waking her up. Her caretaker and I can attest to that. Hayashi warned calmly as if he knew what his guest was thinking. Naruto stared quizzically down at Hinata's cute expression. How could she be so dangerous? He has to be bluffing. He decided to take a chance and tried to shake her shoulder just a slight bit. Before he knew it, there was a sharp whoosh and he stiffened and sweated comically as he now noted a small girl's hand, in a two-finger thrust, just an inch from his nose. The only thing that saved him was Hayashi effortlessly catching the hand by her wrist as if was nothing. Hinata's hand immediately went slack and slipped back to her body as Hayashi let go and went back to the papers with an amused smirk on his face. Naruto trembled and sweated at how close he came to getting a strike to his face, and this girl was now innocently cuddling up tighter against his chest. Okay, I've changed my mind. This girl is dangerous. I am afraid my hand might slip next time, so I strongly recommend you do not risk another chance. She seems to be very attached to her sleep this night, Uzumaki-san. Hayashi spoke in a very amused tone. This truly was an entertaining evening for him. Hyuga Hayashi, you truly are a vicious, evil, and sadistic bastard, was Naruto's sole thought as he sat stone still with this cute and dangerous girl curling up even more and tightening her grip around his waist. He decided he didn't want to risk another stray Tenketsu strike this day because these hurt like hell. I love this. Devious and ruthless, this might be a man after my own heart. Kurama exclaimed with a mock flutter of her eyelids, and broke into laughter at her container's suffering. It was 2 hours before a very tired and nerve-wrecked Naruto left the compound for his home, with the damn fox cackling at his luck the whole way.